Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. As a ball of lava shot into the distance, some of the own Marines being hit by their admiral's attack, ready to be killed as they began to scream with the lava burning them. In the midst of the chaos and what appeared now a lake of lava, was Luffy, with lava still dripping from his skin, but he didn't seem to care now, as his gaze fell to the ground, with a severed arm. He managed to dodge the attack at the last moment. He continued staring at the arm, knowing he couldn't wait any longer, while a canoe appeared in the distance coming out of the lava ball, his arm bleeding. In the last milliseconds of that second, Luffy exploded the ground as he flew towards the bay at high speed, passing by a canoe. Luffy! Yamato exclaimed from Black Pearl amidst all the ships, as Luffy shot out of Manaford, still rising like a missile before dropping towards the ship. Luffy crashed onto the deck of the ship the next moment, exploding against the wood of the ship before rolling, barely able to move at this point. Luffy, are you okay? His crew quickly went to him as he lay on the ground looking up at the sky. It seems I'm just a bit tired, Luffy commented, feeling completely drained of his devil fruit powers at this moment and quite injured, his body no longer having any strength. Luffy, Hancock, Lucy, Nami, Vivi, Baby 5, Yamato, and even Bappu surrounded him, crying like children and hugging him the next moment. Hey, I need to breathe, Luffy murmured with a muffled voice as there were many breaths in his face. Meanwhile, Nojiko, Alvida, Lami, Reiju, Kuina, Robin were smiling with some tears of relief. Ace, Zoro, Usopp, Jinbei, Ecchi, Ivankov, and Marco, who had been teleported by Lami, had a half-smile on their faces, while Crocodile, Mr. 1, Enel had an indifferent look. Hugo, Chaochu, and Chopper were still passed out. You can let him go, he's injured. Shirahoshi in her giant form, exclaimed worriedly while the women seemed to come to their senses and began to move away from Luffy. But then Shirahoshi's shadow of a hand appeared and picked him up from the deck before anyone could react. Luffy felt his body being lifted into the air before hitting the giant's face. I'm so happy you're alive and well. Thank goodness. Shirahoshi began to cry, crushing Luffy against her face before she could start crying like a baby. You're crushing him. Everyone exclaimed on the ship with a grimace, while Shirahoshi did exactly what she had told the women not to do. A blue field began to expand, before Luffy disappeared from Shirahoshi's hands, as he appeared on the deck floor with Lami checking him. I'm the only doctor here in the crew, I'll take care of him now, she warned as she began to assess Luffy's injuries, his body severely battered as he had long passed his limits. Luffy did not complain, and his gaze shifted upwards, where Manaford still stood tall. Stay alert, I'm sure someone will come, and it will probably be Kyuzen, Luffy warned as it looked like someone had fallen from the square, heading towards the sea, with the ships moving away from the area, while the pirates from the fleet filled the ships left at the front of the bay. I'll head back to the Moby Dick, Marco announced and flew off to his companions. As Luffy was being treated by Lami, Marco arrived on the ship. Marco. What are we going to do now? The poops? Jazu said while all the commanders and crew members of the main ship looked at him waiting for some answer. We should wait, trust in poops. Marco spoke as explosions began to appear on the marine island, with cracks occurring and debris falling from the sky. Kyuzen finally fell and touched the water, while everyone noticed the sea starting to freeze. Don't let the ice reach us, Luffy requested as all the devil fruit users nodded. The sea is freezing. The pirates of Whitebeard pointed to the ice beginning to approach them. What do we do, Boss Buggy? On the marine ship, the prisoners exclaimed in fear while Buggy just pointed the Den Mushi transmitter and made a frightened grimace, praying to get out of there as soon as possible. Ace, Usopp, Reiju, Baby 5, Nami, Vivi, Robin, Zoro, Ecchi, and Enel quickly moved to the back of the ship, while the others who did not have very powerful long-range attacks, quickly began to launch all kinds of attacks the next moment, as the ice began to shatter and melt with the heat of the attacks the following moment. This seemed to frustrate Kyuzen on the other side, but he continued, freezing more as the attacks still continued, preventing him from stopping the ships from moving away. Bippo. Do it now. Luffy requested while Bippo nodded. He pointed towards Manaford flying, and while the Marines were all in panic on the island at this moment, with the place bustling and 2 fights happening in the middle of them, they could do nothing but look on, but they were cornered, trying to protect themselves anywhere, but the place was chaotic. While they were already hundreds of meters from the ground, Kobe was scared. He continued to hear voices in his head since he woke up from the fight with Lucy, feeling all the terror that people around him were feeling without understanding anything. What are we going to do, Kobe? Are we going to die here? Helmpo said with a scared and distressed expression. Just make it stop. Kobe murmured, touching his head. The vice admirals were trying to organize themselves amidst all this. 2 admirals were out of battle while Kuzen was down there trying to stop the pirates. There was no more victory for the Marines. What they could do was try to save as many Marines as possible. Come on, get everyone who is falling and put them in a safe place. Tsuru ordered while there was dried blood on her face. They were trying to keep them safe until they could try to get out of this situation, but then, something happened. Manaford suddenly began to fall. This made everyone there immediately scared, feeling the ground beneath them in free fall. Dragon was fighting against Garp and Sengoku. They stopped at that moment, while the severely injured fleet admiral looked in the distance, frustrated with it, and seriously looked at all the Marines. Even Whitebeard and Kaido, both injured, looked surprised. The ships continued to move away and everyone could see Manaford plummeting, while the whole world watched it, saying nothing. They just looked mesmerized by the sight, trying to see how all this would end. Explosions continued to happen at the site while Whitebeard used his power. This continued for a while as the place fell, and then, suddenly, a blast of wind emerged with lightning, and Luffy looked at it with attentive eyes, as he saw a small object fly into the sky at that moment, and it was his father escaping the place and crossing the sky. Dragon's gaze returned to the same ship, which continued firing several explosive flashes on top of the ice that pursued them. Dragon and Luffy seemed to stare at each other at that moment, as the man in the sky gave a small smile and shot towards the horizon the next moment. We'll meet later, father. Luffy murmured softly. Another explosion emerged as a dragon began to grow and fly into the sky. His gaze appeared frustrated, with bloodstains all over his face. He looked towards the ship, with Yamato inside, frustrated, as he had burned the Vivre card connected to Luffy that had brought him here, so he could no longer pursue that pirate group without getting lost. But with no choice, since Whitebeard was still there, he couldn't continue fighting and shot off towards the New World, trying to find Wano again. Another explosion arose with Whitebeard firing into the sky, as all the pirates under his flag opened their eyes and smiled broadly. He exploded onto the deck of the Moby Dick, causing the ship to sink slightly and then bounce back up a moment later with a bit of sway. My children. Despite being injured and covered in blood, Whitebeard seemed quite animated as he exclaimed. Gorrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr laughed and smiled at his crew. Poops. Thank goodness. All the ships with members of the pirates exclaimed while crying with joy that they had finally done it all. Whitebeard smiled at his children, before heading back to the last ship there, the Black Pearl, which had protected everyone from Cusen, who at this moment had given up, as he was concerned with Marineford falling at this moment. Now let's find a good place to talk. Whitebeard said, as Marco approached to help him with his wounds. The gaze of everyone, despite the joy, looked towards the falling structure of the Navy. Luffy, being treated by law, saw it with eyes that felt a bit sorry for the Marines and thought of his grandfather. After all, most there were just Marines following orders, and the Navy also had its importance in combating really bad people on the seas. Luffy turned to Bippo next to them. Cushion the fall, he said at last. Bippo nodded, while moving his arm again towards the structure, beginning to slow its falling speed. Cusen was already prepared to create a layer of ice to minimize the fall, but in the end, Marineford landed silently in front of him, giving a small explosion as it landed on the earthen structure beneath the water. Sengoku sighed with relief, but saw in the distance all the pirate ships leaving with frustration. This should have been the greatest display of the Navy's power to the world, but it became the greatest shame in history. The Navy was in a very delicate position under the gaze of the entire world. Both the pirates of Whitebeard and the Straw Hat Pirates, the revolutionaries, and the prisoners breathed a sigh of relief, finally moving away and distancing themselves from Marineford. Chapter 339, The New Era is Coming. Oh, Boss Buggy. What are we going to do now with the transmitter? One of the prisoners spoke to Buggy as their ships sailed among the other 20 ships heading out of Marineford. The fleet had been larger when it arrived at Marineford, but due to the destruction of many ships by the pacifistas, a little more than half were destroyed. Buggy looked at his hand at this moment, still holding the Den Den Mushi, frowning about what to do with that thing. He immediately jumped up, ran to the side of the ship, and threw it into the water, with the Dendenmushi making a face. With no choice, the connection between the snail and the screens that had broadcast the war around the world was cut off, as the snail began to swim away after having worked the entire time. People around the world saw their screens go dark, looking hypnotized. It wasn't known at which moment, but everything around these people seemed to disappear as they focused solely on what they had been witnessing. Sabaody was in chaos. Luffy's explosive punch had impacted all the nearby islands with a blast of wind and pressure. Everyone was hit, but still, all the spectators kept their eyes glued to the screen after recovering from that wind. "The war is over," murmured a reporter. He hadn't been writing anything since the Elder appeared in the war. "The Navy lost." Another murmured in silence. "Ace of Fire Fists is free. Whitebeard is alive, Manafort is destroyed." The Navy lost countless soldiers, far more than the fleet of Whitebeard's pirate ships. The Straw Hats entered the midst of the war, dominated the entire war and left without losing a single member. People continued to talk among the crowd. How could this have happened?" Someone seemed on the verge of despair, murmured. "I don't believe this. This must be a nightmare." Someone exclaimed, denying reality. "They destroyed the Navy." A reporter began to write while trembling. "Did you see? Straw Hat didn't kill anyone but a Tenri Obito at the beginning. He killed one of the 5 elders." A citizen trembled remembering it. "This is madness. Kaido and even Monkey D. Dragon were there. What kind of war was this? Amazing. I've never seen anything like this in my life." Some people seemed quite excited by the fight. "Did you see? The Straw Hats changed the whole war." A reporter seemed quite excited. "Look up. The violet comet is still cutting across the sky." Someone pointed to the open sky among the huge trees of Sabaody. "He sent the Gorosei there? How far does his attack reach to paint the sky that way?" Another person spoke with concern. "He must be a god. No human should have that power." Another accused. "Does this mean he's stronger than Whitebeard? Did you see how he hit Kaido?" Another person exclaimed. "This is going to be incredible. I'm putting this in my kingdom's newspaper. If my company had the reach that Morgan's News had, it would be so interesting." Another reporter spoke. Monkey D. Luffy fought against vice admirals, Garp, Sengoku, 7 warlords of the seas, 4 emperors, and even a Gorosei. "He's incredible." A man shouted excitedly. "Hey, don't say those things openly. You'll be hunted by the government if those agents over there hear you." Another person warned while pointing to the men lying on the ground knocked down by Rayleigh. "Ha ha ha ha. I saw the birth of a 4-emperor Su. Monkey D. Luffy is definitely an emperor of the sea." Another exclaimed. "Did you see how powerful his crew is? Most have mystical beasts and they even have 2 logias. This is madness. Yes, he will be the king of pirates. No doubt about that." Another exclaimed. "This era belongs to the Straw Hat crew. What can the government do about this?" Another asked curiously. "Isn't it obvious they can't do anything? They've already tried at Tenai's lobby. Now at Manafort, they filled the bay with mystical beasts. You saw. Nothing can stop them." Someone seemed very optimistic about the Straw Hats. "Don't forget there are more Gorosei. I once heard there were 5 of them, so there are 4 more in Mary Ejo's. Did they join to melt them?" Another asked. Amidst the crowd screaming things in both despair and disbelief or even excitement and elation, there was no doubt that people had probably watched the most powerful war they would ever see in their lives. They couldn't believe anything could surpass it. People were running to the Dendenmushi to inform their communication companies, others fell to their knees losing their footing, while others cried and ran to their homes. The entire island of Sabaody was talking about the events, but everyone was unable to imagine which direction the world was starting to take at this moment. Whitebeard might have survived, but from today, a new protagonist had emerged in the seas. An old man took a sip from his bottle atop a tree. Rayleigh had made a great number of faces while watching the entire broadcast, never imagining seeing so many things done by that boy. That boy. His awakening was done much earlier than he could have. What happened? Rayleigh still remembered Luffy's punches on the Gorosei, which made them travel to the sky until he lost sight of them. Rayleigh was wondering just how high he went to generate that comet in the sky. "I don't know what happened to you. But surely you would even make my younger self feel scared." Rayleigh didn't know how powerful one must be to simply throw a punch that makes the entire sea sink just with the pressure of a punch being fired in the opposite direction. It was quite frightening and he had never encountered such a monster in the sea, not even his captain had that capability. And to think we were so weak compared to the new generations. Ha 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 ha. Rayleigh had to laugh. That breaks all the rules of the world. But also, it shows that this is temporary. Now my question is. Can you reach that level of power? You and your sister. Can you take this world out of the destruction that will come to it? He murmured, but with a glimmer of hope for the future, as he drank more from his bottle. Hey. Are you okay? Someone asked a person who was looking down while their body seemed to be convulsing. I. The person exclaimed until their head lifted up while everyone around looked at their strange behavior. I feel like my life was worth living after today. He spoke, then a burst of light emerged, not just from the eyes, but from the entire body. Suddenly everyone in Sabati saw a flash of light, almost believing that Kizaru himself was there, as an explosion occurred on the entire island. Luffy simpa ai. Bartolomeo exclaimed with his glow reaching the maximum power of a fan seeing his idol reach his peak. That's a strong blow. Better close the windows. Shaki said as she pulled the curtain protecting her bar from Bartolomeo's fan glow. She turned back to look at her guests there. Hooray! Hooray! Kami exclaimed joyfully clapping her hands without seeming to have really understood what she had just seen, but was celebrating that Luffy had managed to escape after rescuing his brother. Meanwhile, Popag, beside Kami, lay lifeless on the sofa in the bar, as if everything he had seen was beyond human comprehension. Shaki sighed, understanding very well what he was feeling. They had caught a small screen hacking the broadcast from the main square and watched in the bar alone, then saw every detail of the battle while Buggy filmed it all. She never imagined being so amazed by this war. It seems the Straw Hat Boy has become the main protagonist in this event. I wonder what his achievements will be in the future. She murmured, waiting to see what the future held for the young rising pirate. I swear I will kill him. Elsewhere, a girl was having a rage attack, while still remembering the scenes of the pirates beating her father. He was left in such a bad situation, that he fell defeated with an arm petrified and destroyed. I will kill him, I swear. Bonnie continued to exclaim with so much anger. Easy, Captain. We can't beat him. Did you see what he did to a Gorosei? The men were terrified as their captain wanted to try and kill Straw Hat after what they saw on the screen. He was on a 4 Emperor's level, no, even beyond that after those explosive punches that could destroy everything. He even scarred the sky with his still burning flames. He defeated Saturn. Bonnie commented, seemingly stopping her rage attack. I should have been the one to kill him. But if he defeated him and Dad is alright, I might forgive him. She whispered softly. This was too much for me. Bidge said with a tone of defeat while the rest of the worst generation just watched him walk away. It seems like all those scenes were too much for him. Basil commented, appearing just as shaken. Hey, Bidge. Are you still going to the New World? Are you giving up being a pirate? Ridge asked, while Bidge didn't even respond. It looks like we'll just be picking up crumbs like this. Killer murmured. So this is the real power of the Straw Hats. Kid murmured, before giving a more cautious look. That power made by Monkey D. Luffy. No human should have such strength. How can he reach a level that even makes Whitebeard's power look second-rate? He exclaimed, gritting his teeth. We have a chance of taking the top spot like this. Scratchmanapu murmured a bit frustrated, unsure if he could handle such power. This way, Monkey D. Luffy would win all the territories. He glanced at someone and moved away. X-Drake was leaving there without speaking to anyone or expressing any comment, but anyone who saw his face from the front would see his extremely somber expression, which wasn't surprising for someone seeing their own organization being destroyed while he was working as an undercover spy. His wish was to help the Marines, although he doubted if he would be of much help. The scenes of the Straw Hats arriving, the Conqueror's Hockey, the mystical beasts, Luffy facing all 3 admirals at the same time, fighting against Garp and Sengoku, throwing the prisoner's key and freeing him, the fight against Saturn, the destruction of Manafort, and the moment they fled. All of this was going through X-Drake's mind. He had to get in touch with the Navy to know what to do, because after today the Navy's plans might change a lot. It wasn't just X-Drake thinking about those scenes. Other smaller pirates who wanted to maintain their independence even if they were not from the worst generation, saw that event as an opportunity. I'm heading to the sea. Manafort isn't far from here. I'll ask to join the Straw Hats. Someone exclaimed. Me too, even if it's just for the fleet, I want to be under the wing of someone with those capabilities. Another spoke. The era belongs to Monkey D. Luffy. A third shouted. Let's talk to him before he enters the New World. They decided, as they ran to their ships. Everyone hoping for an opportunity to join the most powerful group, confident that Monkey D. Luffy would really achieve the ambitions of his words, which were to dominate the seas, and seeing Luffy demonstrate a strength that surpassed Whitebeard, got all the pirates excited. Many who had already thought about joining a 4 Emperor's crew, quickly changed their minds, leaving Sabati counting on the chance to meet part of the fleet leaving Manafort. Chapter 340, The New Era is Coming. Oh 2. We shouldn't be doing this. Whoop Slap commented, looking at the crowd partying in front of him. Long live. Long live. Queen Makino celebrated, clapping for the crowd and joining in their celebration. Instead of the Goa Kingdom looking at this with gloomy eyes due to the overwhelming defeat of mine, they seemed to be celebrating while the whole country was partying in the streets. Yakata. Didon was crying out loud in the middle. Yakata. She continued to exclaim while her tears seemed endless. She saw Ace being saved, but soon fell into despair when she saw Luffy being impaled by that monster that appeared at the end. Didon believed Luffy would die there and screamed in despair in that square, while Makino had tears in her eyes and everyone from Fuusha was desperate, watching Luffy in that condition. But then he overcame his adversary, Shattered Maniford. He had come out victorious. While she cried and exclaimed, her companions from her hideout who saw those children grow up also shared their tears. My queen. We shouldn't be so open about favoring a pirate. A minister cautiously said. Don't you see that they're coming out of that place alive? Of course we have to celebrate. Makino said with tears in her eyes, while the minister sighed. The city was filled with posters of Luffy and Ace everywhere, while even the nobles exclaimed joyfully. Nobody there knew if Makino was truly the wife of the red-haired four Emperor Su, but they certainly knew that Monkey D. Luffy was the patron behind the curtains of this kingdom. So it was quite normal for people to have this attitude, but it didn't change the fact that they were cheering for a pirate too. But it wasn't just the Goa Kingdom celebrating at this moment. After all, the entire East Blue was in festivity at this time. It's not like all the islands knew what had happened, but certainly everyone went to Logtown to watch the live broadcast and managed to see as any other important point in the world. How could they have done this, those damned? They led Chaochu astray. The mayor exclaimed angrily, kicking the ground while some members from Orangetown who accompanied him looked on with worried eyes. When that damned pirate said he would take him and said Chaochu would have a bounty soon, I thought he was joking. After all, a dog shouldn't have a bounty. He muttered internally, unbelieving that until a little while ago, he was seeing Chaochu transforming into a three-headed monster and massacring Marines. But, Mayor, they managed to get out fine. A citizen said cautiously. Fine? Did you see what happened to Chaochu? The man pointed to the turned-off screen. He was knocked out by that other old man. If he were in front of me, I would beat him with this cane. The man said, after Chaochu had been knocked out by Saturn along with Hugo and Chopper. But, Mayor. One of the citizens murmured scared. You're talking about a government elder. He's one of those who rule the world. I thought they were just myths. Do I care if he is one of those elders? He hurt Chaochu, I should have beaten him up, but that straw hat pirate got there first. The man spoke, pointing to the comet in the sky. And his citizens just sighed at the grumpy mayor, despite not believing his words. And that damned pirate who attacked our town was there too. I wanted to hit him, because that straw hat prevented Chaochu from eating him. He said at the end, dissatisfied that Luffy prevented Chaochu from killing Buggy. Did you see Usopp, Mary? Kaya exclaimed excitedly now that the war had ended. I saw. It really was a tough fight. Mary murmured, still shell-shocked, wondering how those people who visited their island just a few months ago and, despite the captain mercilessly beating Kuro of 100 plans in disguise, had become as powerful as those people they saw today. These were people who could decimate the entire island. That punch from Luffy to the elder was so fast that almost no one saw it, but the effects were terrifying. He trembled with fear just imagining taking a punch from him. Mary. Kaya called him as she tried to talk to him again, stuck in his thoughts. Yes, young lady, I mean, Queen of Syrup. Mary said the official term while Kaya looked a bit displeased but continued. I'm trying to talk to you. Did you see how strong Usopp has become? She exclaimed, still excited, seeing him fight against vice admirals and other naval forces, transforming into a dragon several times in the midst of battle and launching explosive rays of light. It really is quite a change, my queen. He spoke. Mary had to admit that even Usopp had become a monster, imagining how he would deal with Kuro at this moment. He is no longer that old storyteller. The people of the Syrup Kingdom would be shocked and would never call him a liar again when they saw his performance in the war. He thought. Did you guys see Zoro-senpai? He was fighting the world's greatest swordsman so evenly. What an incredible battle. A student from Shimatsuki Kaoshiro's dojo exclaimed excitedly to his peers while everyone nodded. Yes, did you see when he cut through the two frozen tsunamis with Mihawk? That was incredible, that scene won't leave my mind. I didn't know someone could have such ability. Another student joined the conversation. Can we become as strong as Zoro-senpai, sensei? They exclaimed looking at Shimatsuki, who was there with his arms crossed while looking at the turned-off screen. Maybe. It all depends on how much effort you put into your sword. Shimatsuki replied with his eyes fixed on the same spot. There were many things happening there, first Zoro showing himself to be someone who even surpassed him at this moment, and it hadn't even been a year since he had left East Blue and he was already fighting the user of Yoru in that manner. It was truly frightening, but not only that, secondly, his daughter had also become extremely powerful, even though she couldn't be as strong as Zoro and many others. Being one of the youngest on that ship, she faced each adversary without bowing her head, be it that Tenri Obito, the vice admirals, and even the Gorosei, something Shimatsuki never imagined seeing in his life. So he was proud and had to admit that his words were in vain, compared to the power Kuina had now. He might reach the top one day, even being a woman. And, lastly and most unexpectedly, was Dragon, his old acquaintance, appearing there. But there was also no reason for him to be surprised, despite Icchi, his old companion, also appearing in the middle of the war with Kuina and her crew. Dragon would never let his son be in danger, and probably he was there knowing the government elder was there, although in the end, his son took care of him alone. Kuina, Zoro, the world is changing and a new era will also come. I want to see what your roles will be in the eye of the storm, especially what your captain will represent. He murmured. Did you see Reiju? She was incredible. A cook from Verity spoke while everyone listened. Not just her. Zeph interrupted. The whole crew was incredible. That whole bunch has grown a lot since they left our restaurant, and it wasn't just in numbers. He spoke. That straw hat. I've never seen anyone so strong in my life. He commented. Everyone agreed, and a waiter in the group there shuddered at hearing that. After all, he had started an argument with Luffy as soon as he entered Verity for the first time and had asked for help from Reiju, where he had his first contact with Luffy at that moment. Just thinking that he could take a punch from him, his body would shatter, and he was all goosebumps about it. Zeph said no more while his cooks continued talking, until he looked up, saw the comet, and took a deep breath, wondering what the future of this world would be from today. Governor, are you alright? The secretary spoke to the governor of Kokoyasi Kingdom, who was trembling. Did you see? They made it out alive. The man celebrated excitedly, although he would now complain about Luffy letting the queens be in danger in a war. Yes, let's leave it for later. Let's go back to the kingdom. We have nothing more to stay here for. She spoke, and the man nodded. Celebrations for later in the year. Let's go. He looked back, while he had two warriors from the kingdom with him. Yes. Both spoke while crying, after witnessing so many emotions on those screens. They were none other than Yozaku and Johnny, who stayed in Kokoyasi after parting with the Straw Hats. Meanwhile, people were still there, commenting and exclaiming about what they had witnessed. Sailors looked at the crowd, stunned, unable to shake off a shiver after everything they had seen at the Marine headquarters. They hadn't been summoned to the place, as they were not elite soldiers, and internally they were thankful they didn't have to go to that hell. Did you see that Straw Hat kid? He's become so powerful. The man murmured. Yes, I was in Shelltown when I first met him. I saw him kill Morgan with a punch, ripping his head off, but now he really has become a monster. I never want to face him again, said the sailor in fear. Yes, I was at the looting of Base 16. They just arrived and started firing cannons. I never imagined seeing him like this, not even the most powerful in the Navy could do anything to them. Another spoke, trembling. I faced them here and saw the fight between the monkey family. It was terrifying. The square is now quite repaired, but they had destroyed the whole place. Another spoke. Incredible, incredible. Someone murmured, with a bottle in hand, watching the broadcast on the screens. He had climbed onto a roof and watched every detail, excitedly exclaiming at each shocking scene. To think I lived to see such a thing. My life is fulfilled with this kind of battle, but I still want to see more. The old man exclaimed, who was none other than the owner of the Gold Roger bar, and had met Luffy with Shira Hoshi a long time ago. I'm sure my bar will start filling up looking for stories of Monkey D. Luffy. Maybe I need to update his name too. He spoke while leaving the place with a smile on his face, heading to his bar. Ah! A woman let out a scream, while beside her, a man raised his sword. The Navy lost. The Whitebeard pirates got what they wanted, but the one who won the war was Monkey D. Luffy, even with the entire Navy, an elder, and 2 emperors on the battlefield. To the sea, men, it's time for us to make our name, he exclaimed, and a group of pirates who had recently set out to sea in the East Blue shouted, wanting to go to the New World at that moment. Yes, let's dominate those waters too. If the Straw Hats could do it in a few months, we can also become powerful. They exclaimed, and the group began to leave the square, making everyone cautious, clearing their way. They headed to their ship confidently. Meanwhile, there were other groups that had a slightly different thought. Let's find Monkey D. Luffy. Let's join his crew. We can't miss this chance. This era belongs to the Straw Hat, and as pirates from the East Blue as well, he will surely accept us. Another excitedly exclaimed. This quickly became an epidemic. Even bounty hunters and even non-pirates began to exclaim, wanting to go to sea after the Navy's defeat, It only started where there were screens in the East Blue, but soon the whole sea would know what happened at Manafort, and this sea would become chaos with people inspired by Luffy. Chapter 341, The New Era is Coming. 03. The events unfolding in Logtown began to spread around the world wherever the broadcast reached, with pirates from North, West, and South Blue each drawing their own conclusions as they set sail. They declared this to be an era where the Marines were losing power and the age of pirates was advancing to a new peak. However, for the people of the Grand Line, this could spell trouble. With all the pirates now heading for the Grand Line, the number of crimes would explode across various kingdoms. In Alabasta, where one of the broadcasts was centered, several kingdoms had came to watch the battle, especially its allies. Those kids. They've really grown even more. Kira said, striking a pose next to the King of Drum, who kept his arms crossed, nodding. Chopper fainted at the end of the fight. But I no longer need to worry about him, he has very strong companions, now I can enjoy my youth. She said at the end. Vivi. King Cobra, also watching the broadcast, murmured as soon as it was cut off. The princess is fine, my king. Pell spoke. Yes. But. King Cobra murmured before continuing. Did she have some volume in her belly? He asked. What do you mean by that, my king? Igaram looked surprised at the comment. I'm asking if she's pregnant. He exclaimed, leaving everyone stunned. Alabasta needs an heir. My daughter must bear the future king. He exclaimed, leaving the guards and advisors speechless. I want to see my grandchild soon. The king exclaimed in his mind, with a strong desire to continue his lineage. He's alive. Everything turned out fine. Elsewhere, Mr. 3 was on a destroyed street while the whole place was devastated. I know. But I didn't want him to almost die like that. He didn't even tell us he was going to war. Makino said with dried tears, deeply shaken by the scene of Luffy. She began kicking the ground in agony, increasing her weight and destroying the entire street. There's nothing we can do about it. He had everything planned. Besides, he declared that Ace of the Fire Fists is his brother. Mr. 3 spoke, trying to calm the girl. Meanwhile, another person there was spinning in a whale form while crying, but with joy. Luffy-chan was so amazing. Bentham exclaimed joyfully as he watched all the scenes in front of him with delight. He fought so hard and in the end, saved his friends. It's so incredible. He said excitedly. In Water 7, the mayor finished watching the broadcast with a sigh. It seems that besides a nice lobby, they would destroy the very headquarters of the Marines. But Frankie wasn't there. Means he went somewhere else. Iceberg murmured as his city was silent. It was no secret that this place was Straw Hat territory after he left here. The defeat of the Marines was bad, but it also made Iceberg smile at the end. High in the sky a few kilometers from there, Skypia continued floating with several islands around it, while Shiki's scientist had hacked the broadcast system and put it on for everyone on the island to watch. Well. It looks like they did it. A woman from Skypia murmured. Thank goodness. Luffy is fine. Yuta exclaimed, touching her heart. She also felt agony with Luffy being hurt that way by the Goroseis, but in the end, he was fine. That was super cool. Frankie exclaimed, striking his pose. Yo-oh-oh. They were too much. Brook exclaimed. Laboon agreed, but his sound was so loud that everyone covered their ears. After all, Laboon got stranded in the middle of the city after losing his small form with Luffy using his awakening, while he had to wait for Luffy to return. Shark. Megalo, who wasn't as big, but still had his 20 meters with a bubble ring around his waist for him to fly. Giran, Luffy's monkey, remained silent, but seemed to have a sparkle in his eye after seeing the strength of those fights. They beat Moria-sama. Perona was still dissatisfied with the scene of Moria getting beaten by Jinpai and the others. But in the end they got out of that chaos. Not that I'm happy about it. She said before pouting and looking away, while her ghost manifested looking at her as if she were lying. Amazing, when I see him again, I'll ask him to marry me. Lola also exclaimed from the crowd of spectators in Skypia. Meanwhile, Ganfall was pondering what he had witnessed. Staring at the sky, there were no clouds left, just the comet filling the sky beyond the blue. After all, Luffy's punch had reached them and dispelled all the clouds in the sky with a strong gust of wind. It was frightening. So this is a fight of the people from the Blue Sea? A man from Skypia murmured. And to think they are so powerful. Another spoke. You saw Enel? That bastard was there, and even he seemed so weak compared to the great forces. These people are frightening. Everything seemed calm, the crowd continued murmuring, until suddenly, an explosion occurred and everyone in the City of Angels looked toward a floating island powered by Bippo. Hey, what's happening? You asked. Hello, what's happening here? The scientist activated the Dendenmushi and inquired of the men. My lord, the prison exploded. Someone is trying to escape. He exclaimed as people looked at each other. Let's go. Yuta wiped away her tears and spoke, and all the others followed to see what was happening. Meanwhile, in another place in that sea, below the sea, the island of the fishmen was also finishing watching the broadcast. But unlike the shock, all the merfolk and sirens exclaimed, leaving the country in celebration. Hooray! Whitebeard lived. Yes, they rescued his crew member and he's still alive. The fishmen exclaimed in celebration, happy that their protector had survived. Our great friend is alive. They exclaimed. After all, Whitebeard was someone the entire Fishman Island held in great regard. Seeing him alive after everything that happened was truly surprising and made them joyful. It seems he is alive after all. Shia early murmured, after all, she had seen a vision of the future that Whitebeard could die due to a great enemy, but that enemy ended up being defeated by someone else. As the population of Fishman Island gathered in the center of the island, a boat at the harbor, flying the Big Mom flag, had Kutagari and frowned upon it, as they did not expect this outcome. Fukaboshi approached them. Well, Big Mom pirates, you saw what happened and it's better you leave here, as Whitebeard must be coming here at this very moment. He said. Katakuri, with arms crossed and despite practically being expelled from the island, nodded in the end and looked at Smoothie who was with him. Let's go. He said, and they started leaving the island the next moment, returning to the New World. Mom won't be happy about this. Smoothie commented. There's nothing we can do, just hope she doesn't freak out. Katakuri said at the end, as even if they tried to take the territory, they would have to face the entire surviving fleet returning from Manafort alone, which doesn't seem like a good choice. Meanwhile, back at the island's plaza, Neptune was crying in a corner of the plaza. It's so good that Whitebeard didn't die. Rivashi, one of his sons, spoke joyfully. But Neptune shook his head. Yes, that's great. But my daughter has grown so much, I can't hold back my tears. He exclaimed, as he remembered Shirahoshi fighting in the middle of the war. He was extremely enraged when he saw this, seeing his daughter in such a dangerous place, but still, after not seeing her for months, she had changed so much, and even chosen a trident as her own weapon. He was proud. That's true. And think that she possesses the Conqueror's Haki. Manboshi murmured beside his brother. I hope she comes here, otherwise I myself will go hunting them. Neptune murmured at the end, while Shirahoshi's brothers nodded. In the New World, the survival of Whitebeard took everyone by surprise, especially those who were watching on their islands the battle and had to immediately call their subordinates scattered through the New World going to or already being in Whitebeard's territories to conquer them, informing the occurrences and causing chaos everywhere, making the majority immediately retreat. Big Mom, the only 4 emperors who had stayed in the New World, was shocked by everything she witnessed on Whole Cake Island, wondering how this could have happened. Mom, what will we do? One of her children asked. That old man didn't die. There's nothing we can do. Damn it, but that straw hat. What was that power? She murmured with a certain gleam of fear in her eyes upon seeing Luffy's explosion. How could that rookie have such power? She had never seen anything like it and it was frightening. We can't let that kid grow up. She concluded in the end, as no one would be able to stop him if he were as strong as he was at that moment. She had also never seen a Gorosei and seeing one made her very cautious about the world government as well. As Big Mom plotted her plans, chaos ensued in Dressrosa. Doflamingo's men were desperate, now that the king was dead, who was the mind behind all the schemes and all the underworld market dealings. Now with Doflamingo dead, all the phones were ringing in the royal palace. After hearing the news of Doflamingo's death, Princess Viola was lost in a corner, but could do nothing, while watching Doflamingo's men cry and answer the calls, being cautious about what they could now do. Even though her kingdom was free from Joker, she still couldn't fight those people. How could this happen? How could Doflamingo die like that? And Baby 5? That traitor! They exclaimed, cursing. We have no choice, we'll have to talk to the beast pirates. Diamandi spoke more rationally. The Don Quixote pirates were coming to an end with the death of Doflamingo. What they could do now was seek help from a more powerful group. How can you be so cold? Treble exclaimed crying. We have no choice, we must seek protection. Without Doflamingo, other 4 emperors or even other forces operating in this sea, will try to take Dressrosa. He spoke at the end. Even if we have to give everything to Kaido. This will be our only chance to get out of this situation now. He spoke at the end and everyone agreed. Viola frowned, imagining that now that her country was freed from one monster, another monster would take over, leaving the future uncertain. It seems the war is over. A revolutionary spoke in a remote country. Yes, Imkov and the boss are okay after everything. Another murmured. Whitebeard is still alive, but seeing the death of a Gorosei, that even marked the sky, is really incredible. Yes. We don't know what will happen to the world now, but look up, this is the mark of hope, Remember this scene, it's the hope that we can defeat the world government, no matter how powerful they are. Someone spoke. The mark of hope. Others murmured, looking at the purple comet in the sky. Koala was watching Sabo sleeping when she heard a commotion outside. Mark of hope? What are they talking about? She murmured and looked at Sabo a moment later, hoping he would wake up soon. Meanwhile, back in Paradise Sea, ships with the flag of the Whitebeard fleet continued sailing, while a ship with a skeleton marking scars on one of its eyes, being none other than red-haired Shanks, approached. Shanks himself looked ahead, bewildered, wondering what had happened at Maniford. Watching the Whitebeard fleet half leaving, while the cries of celebration were even heard from there, with the Red Force in the distance. Chapter 342, The New Era is Coming. 04. While the world reacted one way, Maniford finally managed to calm things down, but the atmosphere was somber. Sengoku looked frustrated at what remained of the Marine headquarters. Sailors seemed paralyzed as they looked at the trail of destruction. Some, by some luck, had been unconscious since the Straw Hat crew unleashed their conqueror's haki and were not crushed by the destruction while unconscious. They finally woke up, still remembering the arrival of the Straw Hats as if it was just a second ago. They were now facing the current reality of the Marine situation. Hey. What happened here? The sailor trembled as he surveyed the area. How could this happen? The sailor trembled, viewing the situation. The other sailors who had witnessed all the chaos wore dejected expressions. Garp emerged from among some rocks, tossing them aside as he looked grimly after being punched by his son. We don't have time to lament the Navy's terrible defeat. We need to start rescuing those who need help and conduct damage control. Garp approached Sengoku, continuously clenching his teeth as he viewed Maniford. You're right. Sengoku finally spoke, before starting to issue a command that resonated throughout Maniford. Everyone, take care of all the injured sailors and I want reports of all our losses. He exclaimed. Officers began to issue orders as sailors helped each other, rescuing sailors hanging from cliffs, others trapped in rubble, or even on top of structures that Luffy had created with his body falling to the ground. This continued for a while as Sengoku saw Kyuzen approaching, the only admiral. Well, after all, Kizaru was being dragged injured but still alive. The worst of all was a Kainu who lost an arm while fighting the Straw Hat alone. My lord. Here's the report. An officer approached with the papers after surveying the entire field. The situation was much worse than they had imagined. 40,000 Navy soldiers were killed. Besides Kyuzen being the only admiral not down, all the 7 warlords of the seas were defeated except for 2. Mihawk had stopped acting after his fight with Zoro while Hancock had fled with the pirates. He murmured. Mihawk had left Maniford without saying anything a moment before and didn't respond to any questions. Kuma, Moria were being carried unconscious, while the worst was Doflamingo. Being carried dead by the sailors. From the world government team. 2 Cypher Pol Zero agent members are dead. Kong is also defeated. Along with another 4 Tenri Obitos. He continued reading the report while a group was rescuing them. Furthermore, Monkey D. Luffy killed a Tenri Obito, still having 6 under his custody. Squard killed another after being defeated by the Straw Hats. He finished with frustration. This was an unprecedented scandal in this era, not even Gul D. Roger had done such a thing. Garp said nothing. Even more frustrated by his granddaughter now becoming a pirate, but relieved inside that Ace, Luffy, and Lucy were still alive, despite all the destruction they caused in this war. And Blackbeard disappeared along with his crew and the prisoners he managed to get from Impel Down. That bastard. Sengoku murmured, realizing there was no more sign of his crew since Maniford began to fall. Fleet Admiral. An officer came running to him with a Den Mushi. A call from Mary Jo Eyes. The man spoke. Sengoku sighed. That was expected. He spoke, picking up the Den Mushi. Sengoku. The somber voices of the elders were heard. Sengoku even had to swallow hard. He had never heard this tone from them. They must be enraged. Yes. Sengoku responded cautiously. Come to Mary Jo Eyes immediately, we need to talk. They spoke in the same tone, leaving no room for discussion as he simply nodded. Kyuzen, I want you to be responsible for organizing Maniford. I am going to the Holy Land. Sengoku spoke at the end. He had to go there immediately as he leapt into the air and left the sailors taking care of all the damage. Sengoku could even see the fleet following through the sea as he looked angrily at those ships, but what more could he do? He just turned his face and followed his destiny. Luffy on the deck looked up at the sky with recognizing eyes, his thoughts interrupted as crew members started speaking beside him. Give me that loot. Zoro complained as Ecchi handed him a bottle. I killed 7 warlords of the seas. What else did you do? Just fought a weaker Tenri Obito than my opponent. Lami started arguing with Reiju. TSK. Don't get cocky because of that. I defeated my opponent much faster than you. Rage snarled. That's because he was weaker than mine. He had the power of plasma, very similar to Kizaru's fruit. She scoffed. Hey, can you two stop fighting? Shouldn't you be taking care of Luffy and the others? Vivi approached talking to Rachel, while she went over to Luffy still bandaged on the ground while all his mates were celebrating. Only Baby 5 was beside him fanning him with a fan with a pleased face. How are you? She approached her husband. I'm getting better. But I want some alcohol too. Luffy didn't hesitate to ask. You want alcohol? You need to rest. Nojiko, who was beside him, spoke in a dissatisfied tone. You know that won't stop me from drinking either. Luffy spoke. Do you want some hormones, Straw Hat Boy? Imkov approached, and Luffy looked strangely at him. No thanks. I'd rather stay away from your hormones. Luffy had a big bias against putting hormones in his body. He didn't trust that method much and preferred to stay in that state. You know, but it's a pity your father didn't came to talk to you. I thought he would appear on the ship. Imkov couldn't help commenting. You know he's a busy man. Luffy commented and looked at the group. Shirahoshi, can you lift me up for a moment? Luffy spoke while Shirahoshi, who was drinking a huge mug of orange juice made by Nami, occupying most of the deck with her tail to the outside, looked at him and nodded. Luffy was lifted by the two palms of her hands in that state as Shirahoshi turned to the entire crew, everyone looking at their captain all bandaged up. Guys. Luffy started while Yamato, Zoro, Kuina, Shirahoshi, Usopp, Lamy, Rachel, Nami, Nojiko, Alvida, Vivi, Robin, Hucky, Baby 5, Enel, Jinbai, Hancock Imkov, Crocodile, Mr. 1, and his group, Lucy and Ace who were also celebrating on the ship. Chopper, Chaochu, Hugo were in a corner passed out, but already cared for by Lamy. Hey, get us out of here. The voice of the Tenryubitos was heard while they were still trapped in the cell. Enel. Luffy requested. Enel nodded and struck them with lightning, making them scream in pain. Luffy had no mercy, while they finally quieted down for him to give a small speech. Hurting false gods. I like this. Enel murmured, satisfied with the suffering of those people. I wanted to say that we got exactly what we wanted at this moment. We marked the world with our flag. Now everyone recognizes us as a force in the sea. Our crew now flaunts fame and power, and when we enter the new world, nothing can stop us. Luffy spoke to everyone while most nodded. However, we're not going to do that now. He began, leaving many surprised. We've become powerful, but you saw what the world government can do. We faced an elder and almost lost. There are still 4 of them in Mary Jo's and many holy knights we faced. And I assure you, the government has much more hidden power, while they may be in a delicate situation now. But when they recover, they will attack, so I want everyone to become even stronger. Because when we find the One Piece, the whole world will turn against us and they won't spare any effort to destroy us. Luffy exclaimed while everyone looked more serious. One Piece. Captain? Hugo raised his voice waking up at this moment. Sounds great. He said with a bruised smile. Wolf. Chaochu barked too. A new adventure? Chopper also woke up at that moment, being in the same state as Luffy, unable to move much. One Piece? Of course, the one who will find it will be Pops. Ace crossed his arms and exclaimed. Luffy looked at the other ships while seeing everyone celebrating there. Moby Dick was also in celebration, but another ship approaching them caught his attention, while Luffy cracked a small smile seeing Shanks appearing. Luffy, I'm heading to my ship, you'll have to come there when you're better. Ace declared, cutting through Luffy's thoughts as he nodded. Alright, tell your old man I want a rematch with him. He said with a smile. You're not in any state for that, damn it. Lamy exclaimed with a scowl. Ace just smiled and leaped into the air, transforming into a line of flames while launching other explosive flames into the sky, celebrating as all the pirates watched excitedly. Ace! Everyone exclaimed, watching him slice through the sky before landing on the Moby Dick. Ace! All the commanders and their subordinates quickly exclaimed as they greeted their old mate. Guys! Ace exclaimed, hugging everyone excitedly. He stopped and looked at his father a bit better after Marco gave him some assistance. Gorura. Whitebeard laughed seeing his son, and finally smiled. Good to see you back, kid. Pops. He said, with a few tears running down his eyes. Don't cry, now let's celebrate. Whitebeard declared. Yes. The crew jumped excitedly. But Whitebeard wasn't finished yet. However, there's someone approaching that we need to take care of first. He spoke and looked ahead as another 4 Emperor's ship approached. Luffy. Lucy finally noticed while pointing ahead, stunned. Shanks is here? She exclaimed in disbelief. Everyone looked at the ship called Black Pearl, with curious glances. Wait. Shanks. The red-haired? Nojiko exclaimed, surprised. Yes. But don't worry, he's not here to do harm. He's an old acquaintance, some of you still don't know, but the one who gave me this hat. It was him. Luffy declared, surprising those who had joined after they entered the Grand Line, since Luffy hadn't shared that fact yet. Shirahoshi, move me forward. Luffy requested as Shirahoshi delicately placed Luffy at the front of the ship. He took a deep breath before releasing a statement that resonated across all the ships there. Shanks, you finally showed up, you bastard, now we'll fight to the death. He exclaimed, leaving everyone stunned. Without the power of his devil fruit, he had to shout, but his words made his crew fall to the ground the next moment. What's this all of a sudden? They exclaimed. Meanwhile, at the prow of the Red Force, Shanks looked ahead, cracking a smile at this moment. Chapter 343, The New Era is Coming. The sound of Luffy was heard by everyone as people looked stunned at the ship, noticing the Red Force at this moment. Akon no Shanks is here. The pirates quickly exclaimed. The reinforcement continued approaching the ships at the front of that fleet, while Moby Dick was among them. Shanks. Newgate looked at Shanks on his ship, while Shanks looked back at him with a more serious tone as soon as he saw him. Honestly. I came here thinking I'd find you dead and wanted to save whoever I could from your crew. Shanks said without hesitation. You think Pops would die just like that, Shanks? Ace immediately exclaimed, dissatisfied. Ow, I see you're fine, Ace, I'm glad about that. Shanks admitted, smiling at Ace who was gritting his teeth. Anyway. It seems that everything went well. He looked back at Newgate. You can say that. Whitebeard didn't seem offended by Shanks' words, after all, he himself thought about sacrificing himself, but he managed to survive that place, even though he faced Teach with that strange power and Kaido, the Navy had to direct their forces to deal with another crew. I had some help. He admitted in the end. Shanks nodded. Seems like it's true. He murmured, looking at one of the last ships there, being the one representing the flag with his old hat, given by his former captain. Shanks. Lucy exclaimed excitedly from the ship. Lucy. You're here, which means you left the Navy. Shanks seemed to sparkle with that. Yes. Lucy responded a bit sad about it, but seemed not to regret it. And you, Luffy. Shanks looked at the boy lying in the palms of the giant mermaid on his ship. You seem to have grown a bit, but you're still just a kid, not strong enough to face me, brat. Ha 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 ha. Shanks began to mock. Boss. Lucky Roo approached while Shanks was laughing. Shanks looked curious. Everyone's looking at you like you're an idiot. He told his captain, who turned back to Whitebeard's pirate crew and saw that everyone was looking at them that way. Why are they all looking like that? Shanks murmured, stopping his laughter at that moment. So he's a 4 Emperor Su too. Doesn't look very strong. Nami murmured. Don't be fooled. All my instincts tell me I'd die if I faced him. Zoro commented. Then this is Shanks' crew. Usopp commented, scanning the crew until his eyes met someone staring at him. Dad. He murmured, the man opening a smile for him. KKSS. Buggy's voice echoed through the area as he appeared furious. Oh? Buggy? Shanks opened an excited smile seeing his old mate. Amazing. Boss Buggy is fighting with a 4 Emperor Su. The prisoners began to murmur seeing this. Shanks, you bastard. I hate you since you made me eat that devil fruit and made me lose my treasure map while we were on the Oro Jackson. Buggy began to cry, remembering the immense anger he had for Shanks. Buggy. Don't be like that. I really want to catch up with you like the old times. Shanks commented. Catch up like the old times nothing. Buggy grimaced. Hey, someone get that ship and tie it up with ours. Shanks requested, as he was eager to see his old friend and it seemed that no one there would mind him kidnapping Buggy. What are you doing? Buggy exclaimed as a steel chain locked his ship to that of Shanks. Let's have a feast, Buggy. Shanks said with an excited smile while Buggy started to swear and asked everyone to try to remove the rope, but to no avail. Shanks, you bastard, come to my ship and let's talk. Luffy shouted again. No. Although he was surprised by the crowd's reaction when he mocked Luffy's challenge, after all, he didn't see what happened at Maniford besides the windy and rough sea that the Red Force had to cross twice with the strange comet that he still didn't know had made. He didn't want to meet Luffy yet. Let's talk only in the new world, since you are fine, I will go away. He exclaimed. Alright, you idiot, we'll see you there then. Get ready for my fleet to invade your territory. Luffy exclaimed smiling. I'll be waiting. Shanks said sticking out his tongue, while looking at his men. Let's turn around, and head a different way from them, while Buggy was being dragged by Shanks. He spoke, after all his promise was still standing, but it wasn't the time to really meet Luffy. Help me, he's trying to kidnap me. Buggy exclaimed to his companions, but no one in the Whitebeard's fleet cared. It's a shame we won't see him. Lucky Roo complained, disheartened. Yes. But it won't be long until that happens. Yusuf said with crossed arms, looking at his son from a distance. He wanted to meet him after all these years, but as his captain said, they would leave that for the new world. That comet in the sky. Ben Beckman murmured. It was made by Luffy. He concluded. Yes. Shanks admitted in the end. But still without knowing exactly what happened. Deciding to look into that later. It seems we won't be able to see each other yet. Luffy murmured. Shirahoshi, can you put me down? Luffy. Hancock approached Luffy on the ground faster than anyone else could get there first, as she looked at him worriedly. Let me take care of you, she said. That's great. Can you bring me some alcohol? Luffy asked cheekily. He really won't stop drinking. No, Chico murmured. Foo-fa-foo. Robin laughed and used her power to bring a bottle of sake to Luffy. Hey, he asked me. Hancock exclaimed with a bit of anger, but still took the bottle and began to give it to Luffy. This is life. Let's continue our feast, he exclaimed as everyone began to nod, having started a little before Luffy's and Shanks' speech. They began a great celebration at this moment while Hugo, Chaochu, and Chopper also joined in. The whole world was beginning to receive information about what happened in Marineford in the next few hours, while most people became more scared and afraid of what would happen to the sea in all the Blues and Grand Line. It was no secret to anyone that pirate activities would greatly increase and people would be more susceptible to their atrocities with an even weaker navy. The future seemed quite grim for most. And as the navy began trying to control the situation across all the seas, the pirates, victorious from the war, continued their feasts across all the ships. Beard, continuing to exclaim, they had not only victory after all since they lost many comrades in this fight. They came with 45 ships, including 43 from the fleet and 3 main ones, including Moby Dick. However, only 20 were returning and they had lost at least half of their men in the war. There were 6,000 pirates killed, but the Navy lost more than 40,000 men, which gave them a crushing victory against the Navy, a blow that will be remembered for this era as the Navy loses most of its credibility. The pirates might be celebrating, but they also felt the pain of their dead brothers, but would leave that for later. After all, their sacrifice was not in vain in the end and they would honor them in the new world. The night soon arrived and passed while the ships continued to party, with most not going to sleep. Luffy did not hold back despite being paralyzed with his injuries and stayed on Hancock's legs laughing with his crew. The next morning, he was much better, standing but still bandaged, finding someone on the deck while he touched his belly. I want you to be okay, Luffy said. I will be, Hancock murmured. Tell everyone in Amazon. The Navy won't do anything now that it's broken, but that might change soon, and when it does, we will have moved Amazon Lily. Luffy said. Yes, I will prepare everyone for the changes, she said with a small smile. Despite Hancock having participated in the war so as not to be removed from the 7 warlords of the seas, in the end, she ended up becoming a traitor as she fought with the pirates against Saturn, and Amazon Lily could be in danger soon, so Luffy instructed her during the night to prepare the kingdom. Luffy would move it to Skypiea with Bippo, leaving them in safety, especially with the babies missing a little more than 6 months to be born. That's good, it will be good to have our daughters close to us when they are born, Luffy said. He was excited to have his first child with her. Then I'm going to be an aunt. At that moment, Lucy appeared excited while looking curiously at Hancock's belly. Luffy had spoken last night that he was going to be a father, and Lucy had found out everything. She stayed on top of Hancock the rest of the night asking questions. She seemed quite excited about the idea of having nieces. Hancock, who just smiled and was quite responsive to the excited girl, would not deny Luffy's sister, her excited sister-in-law, the joy of her daughters. Hancock sighed and looked at Luffy. Well, I'm going, she said in the end. He nodded, giving a small kiss. She then began to leap into the air, flying over the sea after that. The ships were still navigating through the calm belt, so Amazon Lily was very close at this moment. Luffy turned his attention back to his ship, with his crew finally calming down from the feast, many still sprawled on the ground after drinking all night and most of the women sleeping in his room. This could also be said of the rest of Whitebeard's pirates who were all down on the ground and even in the masts. Luffy looked towards the farthest ship, Moby Dick, and saw the man sitting in his chair in the middle of the deck while also staring back at him. Looks like we're finally going to talk, Luffy commented as he turned back to his sister. I'm going to Ace's ship to talk with his captain. I'll be back later, he said. I want to go too, Lucy exclaimed excitedly as Luffy leaped into the air and stretched out his hands to grab her at that moment and pull her along. Luffy just wanted to laugh at Lucy, but let the girl be carried by him as he jumped through the air with Moonwalk. Despite feeling a bit of pain in that state, it was nothing that hindered him, and he advanced over all the ships. Landing on Moby Dick, with his sister clinging to him, where the man known as the strongest man in the world was waiting. Luffy faced him while the man did the same. Whitebeard was also bandaged like Luffy, as he had many injuries, and only the man was awake on the deck at that moment. Lucy was looking confused at the silence there. Neither of them spoke a word. Luffy took his eyes off Whitebeard, who looked to the side as he approached and grabbed a barrel of rum and came back towards the pirate, taking a glass and pouring it for him before tossing it to Whitebeard, who quickly moved his hand and caught the barrel. "If we're going to talk, good rum can't be missing," Luffy commented calmly, cracking a smile as he sat on the ground and his sister did the same beside him. The man just nodded. They were finally going to have their conversation. Meanwhile, in Mary Joy's, things were not going well. A heated discussion began in Pangaea Castle, with Sengoku and the four elders. Sengoku could only stay quiet as the men exclaimed angry words against him and his plan, which had been a total failure with unimaginable losses. Kong appeared a few hours later, since he had recovered a bit in Marineford and woke up, but quickly left even with his injuries, as the situation was urgent. "Enough of all this, it's already happened and we should just start thinking about how to reverse this. We also agreed on the plan and it's our responsibility too, so let's start the projects." One of the elders decided. "Yes. It's time to start mass-producing pacifistas and initiating the Seraphim project," he said, while the elder only nodded, knowing very well what they were talking about. "Contact Egghead, it's time for Dr. Vegapunk to start the projects. We're going to create the greatest force the world government has ever had in the history of this world." Another elder spoke at the end with a somber voice. "Now, we also need to put bounties on all those pirates." Another concluded as he nodded. A new discussion began. The bounties on the Straw Hats were to be updated. "Raccoon here, I don't know the ideal number of how many men Whitebeard put into the war, so I ended up asking ChatGPT for help. It gave me this answer: in the Marineford War, Whitebeard managed to gather a considerable force of allies. In addition to his own crew, which had 16 division commanders and about 1,600 men, he also brought a large number of allies from other pirate crews. In total, it's estimated that he mobilized about 43 allied pirate captains, each with their own crew. This puts the total number of pirates under Whitebeard's command in the war at several thousands. The series doesn't provide an exact number, but considering that each allied captain could have between 50 and 100 men, the total number of men beside Whitebeard could easily exceed 10,000. I ended up putting in 11,600 men. Chapter 344, The New Era is Coming. "You are the old man Ace is so fond of. You seem like a nice guy," Lucy commented, sitting beside Luffy. "Gorura. And you are Lucy." Ace spoke very highly of his two brothers. Newgate spoke calmly. "Not just us, there's one more." Luffy smiled at that. "Sabo. I can't wait to see him soon." "Shishi," Lucy said with an excited smile. "We'll meet soon." Luffy smiled, and his gaze fell on Whitebeard. "Anyway, we are heading to Fishman Island. I'm sure Neptune will throw a grand feast." Luffy said. "He will, but do you think the man will easily accept you there after you kidnapped his daughter?" Whitebeard asked with a smile. "Of course, I'll ask her father for her hand in marriage," Luffy declared. "What, you're getting married?" Lucy exclaimed in surprise. "I can't imagine that guy's face, but it will surely be fun." Whitebeard continued with his smile. "There's that, but there are also other things that need to be done there," Luffy said with a serious tone while Whitebeard had a serious glint in his eyes. "What are you talking about, kid?" he asked. "Fishman Island is casting a shadow that will soon cover the island in a civil war. I told this to Shira the first time we met," Luffy commented before continuing. "There's a person named Hode Jones who is forming a group of fishmen with ideologies starting from a fishman named Arlong, one my navigator killed in the East Blue. Even though he was weak, he still managed to plant an ideology of fishmen hating humans, treating them as inferior beings. This guy is also behind the death of Queen Atoheim," Luffy said, while Lucy remained silent this time. Whitebeard looked very serious. Jinbai had mentioned something about this. "It won't be something that happens now, they might act in a few years, but I want Shiro to handle it. After all, this is her land and she is now ready for it," Luffy said. "If the girl can handle it, then it's fine." Whitebeard, despite having Fishman Island as his territory, wouldn't prevent his princess from dealing with the issues. "Another thing also. I intend to move Fishman Island to the surface," Luffy stated seriously. "Do you think you can?" Whitebeard asked, knowing the old dream of the sea folk, they wanted to coexist with humans on the surface. "You know I have Shiki's power in my crew. I'm planning to bring multiple kingdoms together when I head to the New World." Luffy shared some of his plans. "When will you sail these waters, kid?" Whitebeard asked. "Soon, but I plan to train for some time. I'm without my devil fruits at the moment. It will be an opportunity to enhance my haki and body. Luffy said. He wouldn't need to rely so much on his fruits anymore. I see. So you had a negative reaction. You really were scary to deal with that old government guy. And to think they were so strong. I don't know why they weren't sent to Godville. Whitebeard reminisced about his youth. I had to make extreme decisions, but I didn't even have full control of my awakened form. The only thing on my mind was to kill that elder. Luffy admitted. Anyway, I don't know what would have happened if you had shown up at Maniford. Whitebeard admitted, looking up, with the comet still illuminating the morning sky. To be honest, I thought you were going to die. Luffy spoke earnestly. He didn't believe Whitebeard would make it out alive, which is why he didn't promise anything to Jim by had him impel down. Gorura. Do you really think this old man would go down easily? Whitebeard mocked. But then his face turned to a more serious tone. However, with these wounds of mine, I don't think I will last much longer. He admitted, looking out to sea while no one else around listened to their conversation, except Marco hiding, the only one awake that Luffy noticed with his haki. You know that Teach will come after you, right? Luffy spoke. Yes. And let him come. Next time I will be able to finish him. Whitebeard was confident. Just be careful with your fruit. It can absorb all the powers from other devil fruits and I believe it can remove the devil fruit from dead users. You know what that means, don't you? Luffy said with a gleam in his eye, as he began to drink his rum. Whitebeard was surprised for a moment and nodded. So he wants my power in his crew. He said with a bit of disgust. Not just that. Luffy shook his head. He wants your power for himself. After all, he has the ability to hold more devil powers than the dark fruit model, darkness human devil fruit. Luffy said. That's impossible. Whitebeard didn't believe Luffy's words while Lucy looked at her brother curiously. He was already a devil fruit user, even before using the devil fruit. Luffy revealed, speaking about his theory of how Teach's body works. After all, he has not 1 or 2 hearts, but 3. He was already a devil fruit user? Whitebeard stopped drinking as he looked at Luffy in a stunned tone. Has he ever shown that he isn't a devil fruit user? Like, have you ever seen him at sea, getting close to Seastone? Ever? Luffy asked seriously. That. I don't remember. I've never seen Teach at sea. Whitebeard admitted. I don't know how it works, but it's quite likely he ate the octopus fruit model, Kraken. That would make his body have 3 hearts like the mythical beast suggests. Luffy said. Whitebeard was silent for a while, thinking about what he heard. Anyway, be careful with him. I could have killed him before, but I didn't because I believe he will be a good fighter to keep this sea from getting too boring when I reach the top, so don't fall to him like that. Luffy spoke, beginning to form an arrogant smile. Gorrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr Do you think you can do again what you did in Manaford? The enemies for the one who wants to reach the top are nothing more difficult than a war with the Navy. Whitebeard said with interest. You can bet on it. Luffy smiled. He knew the enemies far better than the man known as the strongest in the world in this era of pirates. The new era is coming. Joy Boy will return, the war that will decide the future of this world will happen. And I will do whatever it takes to protect my people. I will dominate all the seas and be known not only as the king of the pirates, but the emperor of all seas. Luffy spoke confidently. I bet my arm on the new generation. The words of Shanks echoed in Whitebeard's memories as he listened to all this from Luffy, but he was shocked by the mention of Joy Boy. I wish I had lived in the era of Joy Boy. In another memory of Newgate, Roger once said this to him. Joy Boy. Who was this? Lucy asked curiously to her brother while he laughed. But before Luffy could answer, Whitebeard began to laugh. Gorrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr Well done, kid. It will be a pity that I won't be here to see how this world unfolds, but it will certainly be very interesting. Whitebeard never cared about getting the One Piece. He knew what Roger predicted was never for him. His only goal was to keep his family well and have a good successor to protect them after death. It's not Teach. But is this the man you were waiting for, Roger? Newgate murmured internally, looking at Luffy, though not interested in asking who the Joy Boy that Luffy mentioned was. The crew continued waking up from Whitebeard's words echoing throughout the fleet, while Luffy maintained a calm smile for the man. Luffy, Lucy? Ace, being on the Moby Dick, approached surprised after waking up. Ace! Lucy exclaimed before they joined the crew, and the small talk between Luffy and Whitebeard turned into a feast as they spent the rest of the day with the commanders and some captains. They spent the rest of the day heading toward the Red Line, while a crew member began to coat the ships even while moving at sea to submerge in the water before descending to its depths. Meanwhile, the meeting continued non-stop among the four Gorosei, Sengoku, and Kong, deciding on the Straw Hat Crew's bounty. They weren't worried about Whitebeard. After all, he wouldn't last long after the damage he received at Manafort, but the Straw Hats were a different matter. So this is the best bounty for him. An elder decided. A rookie with such a bounty. It's absurd. But there's nothing to be done. Saint Ethanburn Venus Giro murmured. A bounty unprecedented for a man who has done unprecedented things. Saint Marcus Mars said in a serious tone. Even though this is the official bounty, it won't be all after all. We the Tenri Obitos will not let this pass easily and will put Monkey D. Luffy's head on the black market. Saint Shepherd Jupiter said. Sengoku and Kong remained silent, as Luffy's photo was printed on the table for everyone to see, his bounty starting with a 3 followed by several digits. The crew of Monkey D. Luffy became the most wanted in the world. In such a situation, I believe we should call him. Saint Topman Warcurry commented. No, we should not bother him. Saint Shepherd Jupiter advised and the others agreed, although Kong and Sengoku didn't know who they were talking about, but they certainly wouldn't ask these four. As the elders spoke, Luffy's bounty was not just limited to that. After all, the Tenri Obitos throughout Marijois, enraged by what they had witnessed, began to call all their contacts, further increasing Luffy's bounty. Luffy might not be the most wanted man in the world officially, but as the Tenri Obitos began to gather money to kill him through the underworld, he surpassed his father, becoming truly the most wanted person in the world, despite having 6 common Tenri Obitos and 2 warrior Tenri Obitos hearts under his custody. Unaware of his official bounty and total bounty, 2 Black Pearls sailed underwater with Whitebeard's fleet, as finally, Fishman Island began to appear in front of them. They had finally arrived. Chapter 345, Fishman Island 01. Fishman Island had become a spectacle in the eyes of those who had never seen it before, with its guide showcasing the gigantic island enclosed in a massive bubble, with the royal family's palace, known as Ryugu Palace, perched above it. Below the larger island were the submerged districts filled with water, where the merfolk who preferred living within the water resided. So beautiful! Yamato exclaimed, gazing at the larger island shimmering in the middle of the ocean. There were some sabati trees rising from that spot all the way to the surface, over 10,000 meters high. Sun rays penetrated the surface and continued down to the ocean floor, highlighting the beauty they were witnessing. So this is your home, it's incredible, Shishara. Lucy exclaimed. It's Shirahoshi, Lucy-sama. Yes. I've never seen it from this side before, it's incredible. Shirahoshi murmured shyly, still towering at her 17 meters, since Luffy had not yet recovered the powers of his fruit. Got it. Hashirashi. Lucy smiled, messing up the princess's name once again. Nay. Finally, we're here. Ecchi commented. Yes. Kami shouted next to him. They hadn't gone to Sabati, but Ecchi had used Moonwalk to travel to the island with Papag to pick up the princess so they could return to Fishman Island safely after what had happened. Jinbai was also on the ship, crossing his arms with a small smile. It really is beautiful. As Shirahoshi said. Vivi commented, enchanted by the sight before her. It truly is incredible. Nami agreed while the rest of the crew made many comments about the island. The ships continued approaching the official port of Fishman Island as hundreds of merfolk wearing armor and wielding tridents awaited along with the royal family to greet them, similar to the crowd that began forming, looking curious and excited at the arrival of the Moby Dick, which was the first ship. The other ships followed closely behind, filling the port with all the ships of the fleet, while Black Pearl arrived as one of the last. Shirahoshi stood out within the coating, watching her people with bright eyes, seeing her home again after months. Father. It's our sister. Manboshi exclaimed, watching Shirahoshi coming on the last ships. 2 giants stood out among them. One was Zors, who was recuperating, occupying an entire ship that barely contained him. Reiju had bathed him with phoenix flames since he was no longer at risk of death. Shirahoshi. Neptune almost cried seeing his daughter finally return home. But his attention turned to the man descending from the first ship, as Whitebeard looked as though he had just walked out of a war, strolling calmly towards Neptune who was waiting for him. It's so good to see you well, Whitebeard. Neptune spoke with a respectful tone. Gorura. How are you, my friends? Were you expecting this old man to die? Whitebeard began to laugh. It's Whitebeard. The fishmen and the mermaids excitedly shouted for Whitebeard. He's okay, thank goodness. The crowd began to exclaim. We've prepared a feast in the island's square, so please feel free to enjoy yourselves, while I want to see my daughter. Neptune spoke as Whitebeard nodded in understanding. Neptune then moved with his children to one corner of the port while the Straw Hat crew finally started to land, leaving the ship. The crew members looked curiously at the fishmen, except for those of the same species, who looked back at the crew. It's them. The princess fought in the war with the pirates. A mermaid pointed towards the giant mermaid. So he is the man who destroyed the Marine headquarters. Another pointed at Luffy, who was descending at that moment. Did you see how strong our princess was? I never thought Neptune's daughter could be so powerful. I had never seen her after she isolated herself in the castle. With the death of Queen Atoheim, she's so tall. People continued exclaiming as the royal soldiers finally arrived with the king himself, and everyone had to make way for them until Neptune finally arrived in the presence of the pirates, stopping with his gaze fixed on his daughter. Daddy. Shirahoshi murmured, almost crying from missing him. My daughter. He spoke, his eyes moist. Sister. The three brothers appeared beside her. Brothers. She said, equally missing them. It didn't take long for them all to throw themselves into each other's arms as Shirahoshi embraced her father and brothers like a family. I'm so happy to have you here again, my daughter. I'm so proud of you. Neptune spoke before stepping back from his daughter. His gaze fell on the man near Shirahoshi, and as Luffy still wore many bandages on his body, Neptune's look turned to anger. When someone had spoken about a prophecy involving someone taking his daughter a while back, he swore he wouldn't let anyone steal his precious daughter. But this man had done something that took his daughter straight to the East Blue, and he had abused her, first with that inappropriate photo of the unmarried princess on a man's lap in a throne as had happened in the Goa Kingdom, and other things he had seen in the newspaper. You. Neptune spoke, pointing so swiftly with his trident at Luffy's head that it created a gust of wind, causing his companions to get into a fighting stance, but Luffy just seemed calm, looking at the trident pointed at his head. You stole my daughter right under my nose. Neptune accused loudly. As the Whitebeard pirates looked on stunned from their ships, the crowd began to murmur among themselves. Stop it, Daddy. Don't hurt Luffy-sama. Shirahoshi immediately stood between Luffy and her father's trident. Shirahoshi, this human stole you. You should never have left your room. Neptune immediately argued. No. Luffy-sama saved me, helped me not be a coward. He said I could continue my mother's dream, that I can be strong enough to take care of the merfolk people. She exclaimed again, with a defiant look towards her father, and the next moment, everyone felt the sea become agitated as the island began to tremble. Hey, what's happening? Both the pirates and the merfolk quickly felt it with stunned eyes. Whitebeard looked at it also surprised, but his eyes widened when he saw that huge shadow emerge behind the bubble covering the island, with a huge sea king beginning to appear to everyone. What is that? Ace exclaimed, shocked next to an equally stunned Marco, who were looking at that huge eye watching them. Why is there a sea king there? Run. It's going to attack the island. People immediately started to get scared, seeing the creature watching them as if they were just ants. Neptune opened his eyes to that huge eye that covered all his field of vision to the sea behind the bubble. Luffy, who was not very concerned with Neptune's threats, looked curiously at the power of Shira manifesting in this way, while the Sea King seemed just to observe them, feeling the wrath of Poseidon, but just its presence agitated the sea so much that it made the island tremble. Calm down, Shira. Let me talk to your father. Luffy spoke calmly. As Shirahoshi heard this and began to calm down, with the Sea King finally leaving the island and disappearing into the middle of the sea, Neptune looked at his daughter cautiously. He had never imagined she could manifest the power she was born with in this way, something she couldn't do 6 months ago. Shirahoshi. He murmured as his gaze returned to Luffy, moving past his daughter. I did take your daughter, Neptune. I admit it, but I don't regret it, and she is an important crew member that I welcomed under my flag. I protected her in all possible ways and will continue to do so. If you think I touched your daughter, you are mistaken. Although she is of age, I respected her. Luffy began with his arms crossed, looking directly at Neptune. But you know what? Since you are here, I'll be straightforward and declare one thing. Luffy continued as he spread his arms with everyone looking at him. I intend to marry Shirahoshi. She will be my wife. He said with his arms out before crossing them again as if he was stating the obvious and right thing. What? Shirahoshi's brothers immediately exclaimed. This is not how you ask someone to marry you. Nami, Vivi, Lami, and Raju exclaimed with a grimace. Foo-fa-foo. Looks like we'll have a new sister. Robin commented. I don't know why you're all exclaiming, your marriage proposal wasn't normal either. Nojiko complained to Lami and Raju. Luffy is so relentless. Usopp murmured. Right, Zoro? He looked to the side where Zoro should have been, but the spot was empty. Zoro disappeared. Chopper exclaimed. Wolf. Chow Chua followed his scent and dashed through the streets past the fisherman looking for Zoro. TSK. Enel just scoffed, uninterested in any of it, while Hugo had a neutral face. Kami, Popag, Hucky, and Jinbai had grimaces while snot dripped from their noses at Luffy's declaration. Besides the rest of the crew having various reactions, Neptune stood with his eyes and mouth wide open, a snot dripping from his nose. What did you say? he exclaimed, not believing those bold words. Luffy. What are you up to now? Ace exclaimed next to Whitebeard. The population also had shocked looks at this while all showed faces similar to Luffy's declaration. What? A collective scream was heard as both the pirates and the island's population yelled in astonishment. Shirahoshi immediately blushed, placing both hands on her cheeks. Luffy-sama, you shouldn't say something like that in front of everyone, but I accept, she said shyly in a tone of a truly infatuated woman. Once again, everyone was shocked. After all, Luffy had declared this to her father. It wasn't a request to the princess, but she accepted it in front of the entire island. What? Once again, everyone screamed. Gorura. These kids know how to be reckless. Whitebeard laughed at that. Your brother really knows how to shock any place he goes. Ace. Jazu commented, looking a bit stunned since a wedding was the last thing they expected upon arriving at Fishman Island. While everyone was shocked by this, a mermaid looked around at others who seemed quite shocked by it, but unlike the group, she just maintained a small smile. So this is the famous Monkey D. Luffy. Madame Shia early murmured, looking at him with interest. After all, she still had her hands trembling with the vision she had that morning, a vision of the future where the entire world was at war, and that boy wearing the straw hat there, was the man at the center of the war that would decide the fate of all inhabitants of this world. Though in the vision, the one wearing the hat was that sailor near them, with her having a different form in the vision, with white hair and quite shocking powers, and what Shia early saw, was Lucy fighting alongside her brother. Chapter 346, Fishman Island 02. Chow Chua followed Zoro's scent through the streets of Fishman Island while the locals stared at the strange creature curiously, as they had never seen a dog before in their lives. He continued down the streets until he reached the far end of the island, wondering how Zoro had ended up there, but what shocked the animal the most was that his scent ended at the bubble, making him wonder where Zoro had gone. Wolf! He started barking, but the only response from the other side of the bubble were the fish swimming at the bottom of the sea. With no choice left, Chow Chu had to simply turn around before heading back to the group going to the square, unsuccessful in finding his companion. Deep under the sea. Beneath the main island, the atmosphere wasn't at all pleasant or even shocking like above, since the group neither knew what was happening up at the port nor seemed very happy with the news that Whitebeard was still alive, which destroyed all their plans. How would they launch an attack on Ryugu Palace now? This is bad. Jones. Dawson spoke with a worried tone. Yes. Moreover, that man who defeated Arlong in the East Blue is extremely powerful. Can we handle him? Zoe said with a somber tone. You saw what he did at Manaford, his crew is as powerful as him. Besides, Daruma said before glancing at a corner. My Shirahoshi is back. But my powers no longer work on her. Deccan 9 started crying. Why are you so down? Just drink a bit and it'll pass. Hayauzu spoke while belching a bit from his bottle of rum. Hody Jones. Suddenly, a fishman entered the place with an urgent tone. What now? Hody Jones was already in a bad mood as he looked at the fishman. There's a human in the district. He exclaimed. A human? What is he doing here? Hody Jones couldn't help but be surprised. He's out there. The man pointed as they immediately went out to sea, while a group of fishmen who shared Hody Jones's ideology more than celebrating Whitebeard's return on the main island, stared, forming a crowd around that human, who was none other than Zoro himself. I feel so weak. Zoro murmured while he was in the middle of the sea, barely able to move in the water with moonwalk, feeling a great pressure on his powers. But he still managed to stay within the sea. Gosh! How can they get lost like this? Don't they have any sense of direction? Zoro murmured while his cheeks puffed up as he held his breath. He looked in front of him. A crowd was surrounding him at that moment while new fishmen approached him, looking at him with interest. Maybe they can help me. Zoro thought and started making signs. Hody Jones looked on, stepping in front of all his subordinates. What is he doing? A fishman asked as Zoro was making strange gestures, since he couldn't speak. I don't know. Humans are so strange. Another fishman spoke. Hey. I know who he is. It's Roronoa Zoro. Daruma said, recalling that he saw the poster of the Straw Hat Pirates, a group they had been interested in since they knew they were with the Mermaid Princess with them after defeating Arlong. So he's the spacey one of their crew. Hayauzu seemed interested as he drank his alcohol underwater. Zoro continued making strange gestures at the bottom of the sea with a slightly tired face. Can anyone tell what he's saying? Ikaru's much asked as he saw the human continuing to mime to everyone there. Let me see. A thunderous voice was heard at this moment, as the huge Watatsumi looked at Zoro with narrow eyes. Can you guys tell me how to get to the square of the island? Watatsumi spoke with a pause while trying to see each movement of Zoro and what he wanted to say. Square. He's talking about the main island. The fishmen soon became astounded by this, wondering if this man had some sort of directional problem. After all, the square of the island was on the island. "I think this human is lost," one of the fishmen murmured. "Humans are really inferior beings." Another mocked. "Isn't this a chance to destroy the pirates who ruined our long?" Another murmured. "This sounds interesting," Hayauzu said, coughing drunkenly. "Leave it to me?" He spoke and grabbed his sword. Zoro looked at the fishman who suddenly moved, at high speed in the sea, but for Zoro, even weakened in the sea, he saw the swordsman coming in slow motion. "What?" everyone exclaimed in the next moment as Zoro defeated the fishman with one strike, reappearing behind him while Hayauzu had white eyes with his blood streaming through the water as he floated defeated. "That damn human! Let's defeat him!" other fishmen exclaimed as they prepared to attack Zoro. Then a fight began while Zoro did not understand why he was being attacked, but even with his face still tired, and holding his breath, he continued defending himself from the attacks of those fishmen as muffled explosions in the deep sea kept occurring around them. It didn't take long for structures in those districts to be destroyed, as new fishmen from there went to the site, looking stunned at the scene in front of them. "What is this?" they immediately exclaimed. "How could this happen?" Another spoke. Everything was destroyed, but not only that, Hode Jones and his main members were lying defeated, floating in the sea, while Watatsumi was now left lying on the ground atop the destroyed buildings, all of them beaten. Hode Jones, the new fishman who shared his ideology about the fishman race being superior to surface species, looked scared and went to help their leader. Meanwhile, Zoro continued jumping through the sea with a tired face holding his breath, until he saw something in front of him, the graveyard with the Noah's Ark, and saw they don't seem to be here. "But at least I could breathe a bit," Zoro concluded without thinking that looking up, he would see the island where his companions are. He was frustrated while his companions should be drinking sake at this moment. Which was true, after all, the main island square was having a huge party with all the inhabitants, as it was a feast that matched the whole kingdom, so it was not just held privately at the Ryugu Palace. "Ha ha 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 ha. Come on, father-in-law, you can't be in such a bad mood at the banquet," Luffy exclaimed to Neptune, who looked angrily at him. "You damn brat. You dare steal my beloved daughter and still want to marry her?" Neptune spoke angrily. "Straw Hat." The three brothers seemed to share their father's opinion as they looked at Luffy angrily. "Luffy, you shouldn't provoke them like this." Nami approached Luffy while he was eating with Lucy and Ace, near Whitebeard. Baby 5 was feeding him. "Don't be like that. He's my father-in-law, now we're family," Luffy said as he grabbed Nami, who let out a surprised scream and was pulled towards Luffy. "Luffy?" Nami exclaimed before receiving a joyful kiss from her husband. "How dare you kiss another woman while you are trying to marry my daughter?" Neptune shouted with red eyes. "You damn! You're cheating on Shirahoshi!" the brothers exclaimed to the future brother-in-law. "Don't be mad, Dad. Luffy-sama has more than 10 wives." Shirahoshi approached drinking her juice. "More than 10 wives?" Neptune seemed to be having an attack at this moment as his head caught fire with anger. "Tell me, my daughter. Has this human ever touched you? Because I swear, I'll kill him as soon as I hear anything like that." Neptune shouted angrily. "No, Dad. Though I wanted to know why Luffy-sama and the others made strange noises, they seem to be having fun," Shirahoshi said with her hand on her chin, while both Neptune and his sons fell to the ground at that moment as if they had lost their souls. "Dad-sama. Brothers-sama." Shirahoshi was extremely worried about them at that moment, not knowing why they were having this reaction. "Gorrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr from all over the island, while the Neptune family had also provided food for everyone to also get involved in the celebration. Everyone seemed joyfully eating, while the main members were gathered in the center of the place, with Whitebeard, his companions and Fleet, while Luffy and the others were beside. Lucy continued eating everything as her belly grew and grew. "Hey, Lucy. You're eating my food," Ace exclaimed, frowning. "Stop that, Sailor-san," another commander exclaimed as his food was stolen. "Luffy, tell your sister to stop eating my food," Usopp exclaimed. "My food is disappearing," Chopper shouted. Off. Chaochu did not like a stretched hand stealing his piece of bone-in meat. "Ace's sister is a friend, she can eat as much as she wants," Or said, his voice echoing through the square. He was already conscious, despite being bandaged and his leg still severed, but he let Lucy eat his food with a happy smile. "Foo-fa-foo." Robin laughed. "You dare to steal the food of a god?" Onel complained and launched a bolt at Lucy. But as soon as the light from the bolt disappeared, Lucy was fine as if nothing had happened. "Lucy, at this rate, you're going to finish off the banquet," Luffy exclaimed laughing. The banquet continued for the next few hours while the crew kept up their usual pace, until everything calmed down while only the pirates were no longer in the square. "It's a shame we couldn't talk to him," one mermaid murmured. "Stop that, you know he's engaged to Princess Shirahoshi." Another mermaid spoke, but had a dreamy look like her friend. "Can you two stop that? Let them be," Madame Shirahoshi said alongside, looking at her employees with disapproval. "I wonder if he'll go to the mermaid cafe? That would be interesting." Another mermaid murmured. "I don't know. But now that the banquet is over, let's get back to work," Madame Shirahoshi said eventually. Back at her Yugu Palace, the party continued while all the pirates went there as Shirahoshi seemed quite comfortable seeing the rooms of her castle after years locked in her room. "It's so good to see my daughter not afraid to leave her room anymore," Neptune cried as he watched Shirahoshi looking curiously at all the places in her house. "But that doesn't mean I'll let that damn human marry my daughter," Neptune concluded. "So this is Neptune's palace," Ecchi murmured. "So big," Kami said excitedly. "There must be many treasures here," Nami exclaimed with dollar signs in her eyes. Hey, can you stop that?" Nojiko slapped Nami's head. "Is there a dragon outside, can we beat it?" Yamato asked curiously. "You know that's a statue, right?" Kuina said looking at Yamato as if she were a fool. "OWW. Never thought I'd be here in my life," Papag exclaimed, raising his hands. "Speaking of which, where is Luffy?" Lucy asked, still eating. "He went to talk to Pops about something," Ace replied beside her while also eating. After all, Lucy had finished all the food at the banquet in the square and they had to eat here. "So, what did you want to talk to me about that needed to be private?" Luffy asked looking at Whitebeard drinking his rum. This was a different situation from what happened on the boat. After all here they had privacy, while Whitebeard needed to talk about the future of his children, since he didn't have much longer to live after the damage he suffered at Maniford. Chapter 347, Fishman Island 03. "You know," Whitebeard began, "I won't be alive for much longer," he admitted. Luffy looked at him with a rather serious expression, nodding, understanding what the man meant by those words. "Yes," he said. "My family is not strong enough to defend against other 4 emperors. As you can see, I hope to have a powerful successor, but I haven't found anyone yet and believed that Ace would become that person," Whitebeard admitted while Luffy nodded. After all, he really saw Ace as his potential successor, even to the person who would find the One Piece hidden by his father and lead the battle that would involve the entire world. However, his death was approaching, and Luffy didn't know if Whitebeard still believed Ace would be that person. In fact, it wouldn't matter. "Do you think everyone would follow me just like that?" "I doubt it." Luffy spoke immediately, reading Whitebeard's thoughts. "I don't think so. But I fear for their lives when they try to defend my legacy with their current strength," he murmured. "Unfortunately, that will happen, Whitebeard. But if they really want to join my flag, I will accept them," Luffy said. He would not deny these people, they were strong and reliable, at least more so than most of those he mentioned when he went to Sabaody. The sea was infested with pirates looking for Luffy wanting to join his fleet. Luffy wanted to have an army, but not in that way. After all, he preferred quality, and these pirates were often just criminals looking to commit crimes under the shadows of a criminal flag. Whitebeard looked at him for a while and decided to continue. "What are your plans for the new world?" "I plan to stay in paradise for another year since I will train and perfect everything I've learned. We will go to the New World as soon as this time passes and start conquering the islands of the New World by stealing them from the other 4 emperors," Luffy said, smiling. "You plan to start a fight against everyone at once?" Whitebeard was surprised by this statement. "Yes, I already have conflicts with Kaido and Big Mom, so I don't mind messing up the entire New World until I create my own territory before stealing all the red poneglyphs with the location of Laugh-Tale," Luffy said with confidence. "Do you think you will be able to dominate this sea? Do you understand what it means to find Roger's secret?" he asked with an intense look, and Luffy just smiled. "I know very well, I've been preparing for this since I left East Blue. You can see, I have the most powerful crew of all because even if in my current state I can't reach the level of a 4 emperors, I have many companions who are on par with commanders and will be even stronger," Luffy said, clenching his fist. "Before my powers return to me, I will be as strong as any 4 emperors just with my haki and physical body," Luffy declared. "I even pondered giving you a beating. Gorura. Arrogant brat. Very well, I would like to leave my territories under your flag. When I depart with my crew." In the end, Whitebeard spoke his thoughts. "I will go to the New World in a year. I will be willing to take whoever wants from your crew if you are not alive by then, but try to stay alive, old man," Luffy said with a satisfied smile. "Very well, if that guy conquers my territories by then, Expel him from there as best as you can. Whitebeard didn't seem very confident he would live until then. Yes, Teach is someone I intend to give a beating to as soon as I see him. Luffy said. Gorr. It seems this old man can finally rest. Whitebeard said with some satisfaction. Well, if you see Roger on the other side, tell him I will surpass him. Luffy said and began to get up. I will go talk to my crew, after all, there are still things I must do on this island. He began to walk away from Whitebeard after that, heading to the main part of the castle. Whitebeard was left alone, watching Luffy's back as he walked away. Tell Roger that he will surpass him. He thought of Luffy's words. Gorr. Could it really be him, Roger? Whitebeard couldn't help but comment in the end while sighing alone. He had to admit that he had little time left to live and was happy to spend it with his family, but he could also rest in peace knowing that his children would still have a powerful ally, and that if it depended on him, Luffy would have his territories and fleet as long as he could protect them. Luffy returned to the throne room, which was now infested with pirates. As he passed through, he was recognized and greeted with admiration, gratitude, and even fear by Whitebeard's fleet pirates and their captains, until he finally reached the person he wanted to talk to. Shira. Luffy called to the mermaid. Luffy-sama. Shirahoshi approached Luffy. Shall we go to your mother's grave now? I want to visit that place. Luffy said, while Shirahoshi's eyes lit up. Yes. Let's go, Luffy-sama. She seemed quite excited. Robin, come with us. Luffy also requested, and Robin approached, while Shirahoshi picked up the two before flying out of the room. Shirahoshi. Neptune saw that at the last moment and cried out. She doesn't even ask for her father's permission anymore. He complained, feeling his daughter had become quite rebellious. Luffy and the others left Ryugu Palace after putting a bubble around themselves to protect against the seawater while Shirahoshi quickly took them out of the royal area, crossing to the side of the island as they continued descending. Where could my mother's grave be? She asked, looking at the sea fungus. There. Robin commented, seeing a light coming from a forest, while Shirahoshi continued to approach. What is that giant ark? Robin commented, seeing the enormous ship beside it. This is Noah, Shirahoshi's vessel. Luffy commented. What? My vessel, I won't stay on the Black Pearl anymore? She exclaimed, horrified by that. You will, Shira, but this is a ship that only the kings of the sea can pull, you will command it one day. Luffy said, and they finally reached the location. Zoro is here. Luffy seemed shocked as he watched Shirahoshi pass through the bubble with Robin and himself. You finally stopped getting lost. He commented. Ha 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 ha. Luffy laughed before mocking Zoro. You got lost, you idiot, you also missed all the loot from Ryugu Palace. He said. What? Zoro seemed shocked. Anyway. Let's move on, there's a poneglyph here and a Toheim's grave. Luffy said, jumping off Shirahoshi's back and landing on the ground with Robin doing the same. This is the forest down here. It's as beautiful as the ones on the surface. Shirahoshi murmured until they finally found the grave. She stopped to pray for her mother while Luffy took Robin to the poneglyph nearby. Well. It seems it's as I thought. Luffy let his thoughts escape as he read the symbols. Wait, you know how to read this? Zoro asked, curious. Yes. For a long time, actually, I learned from Robin. He declared, approaching the stone and touching it. Luffy closed his eyes and waited for the voice of all things to say something, but all he could hear was a sound about. A battle happening with explosions and screams. How strange. He murmured before losing the voice of the poneglyph, as he couldn't visualize anything else. Did you notice anything, Luffy? Robin asked, curious, knowing about the ability her husband had mentioned once, studying the poneglyphs he found in East Blue. Nothing much. Luffy commented while sighing, but Robin didn't stop her questions there. This poneglyph is different from the others. Joy Boy, who was he that you mentioned before? She asked, curious. She was happy to find another stone of her dream, but more doubts arose for her. Joy Boy is my sister. Luffy shrugged. Hey, what kind of answer is that? Zoro made a face, but Luffy didn't respond, his gaze returning to the stone. Here, Joy Boy would marry Poseidon, but it's her brother. Luffy smiled and turned back to Shira. Are you done? He asked, and Shirahoshi nodded with some tears in her eyes after finally seeing her mother's grave. Yes, Luffy-sama. She said with a tone of gratitude. This is good. It's time to liberate this island. This is a good opportunity. Luffy declared as his companions turned their gaze to the captain, curious about this, but Shirahoshi was the only one who understood those words. Yes. Luffy-sama. Shirahoshi said, grabbing her trident with a determined look. It was time for her to finally execute what she had agreed to in East Blue as soon as Luffy had included her in his crew. Although Luffy had expected Hoodie Jones to be stronger, since they had not yet stolen the royal treasure, without those drugs, they were extremely weak. But Luffy wanted to end this. If they did this a year from now, they would also be so strong that they would deal with them with the same ease as now. Hoodie Jones had just regained consciousness while his face was bruised and with a huge cut after facing the human swordsman, which had not ended well for him and his companions as the others were also getting up. Damn. How can he be so powerful? He wasn't a devil fruit user. How can he still be much stronger than a fishman in this place? Hoodie Jones muttered angrily while his companions remained silent, frustrated by the situation. More and more fishmen appeared until there were 10,000 of them, with Watatsumi still groaning from his injuries. That damn human. Some fishmen complained. He must not be far. Let's call the Kraken. Hoodie Jones immediately said. Should we beat the drum? Asked, surprised. Yes. Call him. He said as they prepared to finish off Zoro with hatred for the humiliation they had suffered from that human. It didn't take long for a huge horn to echo through the depths of the sea, and the next moment the sea seemed agitated as a huge shadow emerged, coming to the fishman district below the island. Kraken, I want you to help me kill a human. Hoodie Jones spoke with a firm tone, while the Kraken seemed to nod. Now let's find the human. Hoodie Jones said as he prepared to go after Zoro, but at that moment, a huge shadow appeared above him. Then a sound exploded in the middle of the sea the next moment. Sarah-ami. An object at high speed traversed the sea and went straight for the Kraken before it could react, with the strange name. Luffy appeared in front of him inside his bubble on the Kraken's face, while his arm was coated with hockey, and he punched the cheek, making it sink immediately as the Kraken fell knocked out backward. Sarum, I'm going to make you my pet. Luffy said excitedly as Shirahoshi flew to fight the 10,000 fishmen with her trident. Chapter 348, Fishman Island 04. The sea turned at the bottom of the island as Sarum fell, struck down by a hockey-coated punch from Luffy. Even without his devil fruits, he was extremely powerful for rookie. The Kraken was knocked out before he could look ahead, seeing his attacker right in front of him. He immediately glared angrily. I've decided, you will be my Kraken, a pirate needs one. Luffy declared with a smile. Immediately, the mythical creature began sending its tentacles at Luffy, who started dodging them easily as he bounced from side to side with moonwalk. The Kraken was surprised again as Luffy appeared in front of him after zigzagging to his head, where he struck him once more. But Luffy resolved to end this as he knocked out the giant creature, with it falling to the ocean floor. What? The nearby merfolk were already stunned to see someone punching the Kraken, but seeing him knocked out with a second blow left them bewildered. It's him. It's Straw Hat. They exclaimed, now recognizing who had done this. That damn human. Hoodie Jones was frustrated, watching the situation, wanting to kill him, but he also knew that this man was a monster. Hey, what is that? A merman pointed upwards, as a shadow approached in front of the sky's light. A giant mermaid. Is it King Neptune? They exclaimed, thinking it might be Neptune due to his size and trident, but as the person appeared, revealing a feminine figure. Is that Princess Shirahoshi? What is she doing here? Shirahoshi. Vanderdecken 9 exclaimed, eyes wide, seeing the princess he always wanted to marry, to the point of threatening her and making her stay locked in her room, but for some reason, he had lost his ability with her after hearing she had disappeared and the country was put on alert. Shirahoshi approached the crowd while Zoro and Robin stayed back. Luffy wants to catch another animal? Zoro asked curiously. Foo-fa-foo. Where will he put this one? It seems this one lives under the sea. Robin commented. Shirahoshi looked at the crowd looking at a group of fishmen stopping some distance from them. You want to cause chaos on the island of the merfolk, don't you? Luffy-sama, that you try to coup in the future. She said calmly. You figured it out. Hoodie commented, looking interested. He wouldn't deny it if they found out. We are superior to humans. Neptune's management is weak, we must dominate the surface. Hoodie declared firmly as everyone agreed. Then I must fight you. Shirahoshi said with an even firmer tone. Shirahoshi, marry me. Vanderdecken 9 shouted from the side. I can't, I'm going to marry Luffy-sama. Shirahoshi exclaimed. What? Vanderdecken 9 exclaimed, not believing those words. Finish her. Hoodie exclaimed as his soldiers moved into fighting position. Leave it to me. Watatsumi exclaimed, stepping in front of Shirahoshi. Sorry, Mermaid-san. He said, clenching his fist before launching it at Shirahoshi. Shirahoshi watched calmly, before swinging her tail and disappearing, then appearing in front of the giant who was still moving his arm to punch. In the next moment, Watatsumi's cheek buried as he was sent flying backward with force by the hockey punch, making the man fall to the ground crying out as buildings were destroyed and some merfolk were crushed by his immense body falling far away. Ah! The merfolk screamed in desperation as they were crushed and sent flying. What? She's that strong? They exclaimed, stunned. Hody clenched his teeth. Attack her! Hody exclaimed as several of his members began advancing through the sea. Seeing this, Shirahoshi began moving at high speed, disappearing and reappearing beside them as she sliced through the sea with her trident and launched water strikes. Even as they also launched strikes with merfolk karate, they couldn't compare to Shirahoshi's attack, which caused the sea to churn the next moment as a giant wave appeared, devastating the whole area. She's very strong, Mr. Jones. A merman exclaimed, looking bewildered at the scene. So this is the strength of the princess. She even surpasses Genbai. Hody was frustrated for not having his pills he planned to take. Mr. Jones. A merman exclaimed to a huge shadow emerging, as Shirahoshi became a giant creature at that moment. Finally, Leviathan appeared in its serpent form while looking at the 10,000 mermen who maintained stunned looks at the transformed mermaid princess, something they had not seen in the war. Hey, she can transform into that thing? What is it? The merman exclaimed, stunned. She was as big as the kraken, over 100 meters long. As she looked at her opponents and roared, making the entire sea tremble. All 10,000 mermen looked on fearfully, shielding themselves from the water crashing against them. Can we fight against this thing? The merman murmured. Hody Jones, equally frustrated, saw that they could not win. We must escape from here. We cannot fight her, let alone with Straw Hat and the members of the Whitebeard crew on the island. He murmured, seeing that this was a disadvantageous fight for them and they would have to escape to try to deal with them another way or when the pirates were no longer on the island. However, Leviathan began to glow at this moment with a blue hue, and the sea began to get all agitated as Shirahoshi released her power. Luffy was next to Sarum when he saw the entire sea turning strange. Amazing, she is so powerful within the sea. Luffy murmured, seeing the true ability of Shirahoshi in her domain. Besides being able to control the entire sea with her econ, she also had control of the Sea Kings, making her practically invincible underwater. He had to admit with some admiration for his companion. Suddenly, everything began to stir, and water hurricanes started to emerge all over the sea, rising upwards. This affected not only the district but also the entire island began to feel it, trembling with huge hurricanes emerging from outside the bubble as everyone still celebrating at the feast looked stunned. Hey, what's going on there? The residents were scared by this as they saw chaos making the bubble start to shake as if it would burst at any moment. Even Neptune came out of his palace along with other pirate members, who were there looking equally stunned at this. Unaware that his daughter was producing all this. Meanwhile, in the midst of the chaos, the hurricanes continued to swirl through the sea and the mermen looked scared at this, not knowing how to act. We must flee immediately. They exclaimed as they prepared to leave. However, the glow from Leviathan grew even stronger and launched its attack, while all the hurricanes began to be directed towards the crowd of mermen. Boom! The sound echoed throughout the sea, and even the sea on the surface became agitated by this, but the whole place at the bottom of the sea began to be devastated as mermen were thrown far away with the impact. Even Zoro and Robin at a distance had to protect themselves from it. From a distance, Luffy saw various rocks flying towards his direction while Sarum was behind him. Sarum suddenly woke up stunned with the sea and the ground being devastated, as he saw various rocks flying towards him, but the human who had hit him began to move, breaking all the huge rocks with a hockey-coated punch, protecting him. A cloud of dust was launched in the next moment covering the seabed rising upwards, as people could finally see the direction from where the chaos began with the sea beginning to calm down. When Zoro and Robin finally managed to see through it, a huge hole appeared in front of everyone. The entire district was no more, while thousands of bodies were floating in the sea, knocked out. Well, she ended that pretty quickly. Luffy murmured as he no longer needed to punch rocks at the bottom of the sea, protecting his pet. Leviathan saw the result of the attack and transformed back into its original form, looking at it curiously. Did I overdo it? Shirahoshi murmured. Hey, that was quite surprising. Robin approached Shirahoshi. Thank you, Robin-sama. She smiled, pleased by the compliment that she was finally strong. That was really surprising. Zoro murmured, looking cautiously at the being who could devastate an entire city and defeat more than 10,000 opponents in just one strike. Luffy smiled at them from a distance then turned his attention to Sarum, who was awake. He approached his slightly bruised face and crossed his arms. Sarum, now you will belong to the Straw Hat crew. Luffy declared. As Luffy continued trying to convince Sarum to join his fleet, a group of Neptune's soldiers quickly approached the scene with the king himself, concerned about what had happened. Shirahoshi! Neptune exclaimed as he approached his daughter. What happened here? He asked worriedly. Daddy, I finished off the bad men. She spoke in a timid tone. What do you mean, you did this? He was stunned, not knowing about Shirahoshi's transformation and believed it could be the Sea King's. Let me explain, father-in-law. Luffy stepped forward at this moment. After having talked a bit with Sarum and convinced him to be a member of the fleet, he could explain the situation better than Shirahoshi. Despite some veins growing on his forehead from being called father-in-law, Neptune stayed silent, waiting for Luffy to speak. Luffy ended up explaining the situation, and in the end, he made a statement about it. Hoheim. It was Hody Jones who killed your wife. He said, as Neptune's eyes widened. What are you saying? He murmured. Hody Jones is a cancer to the island. While your wife believed in the coexistence of humans and merfolk, he was an antagonist. He wanted the opposite. He wanted the merfolk to go to war against humans and for them to dominate the surface, believing that his race is superior. It seems like a foolish dream. After all, merfolk are very few compared to humans on the surface, and much weaker than the major forces. Luffy scoffed, not intending to offend Neptune, but it was true. However, they wanted to use the power of Shirahoshi, which could balance the forces. Luffy added at the end. This. Neptune was furious. Are you sure it was him who killed the Hoheim? He exclaimed, seeking an answer, and Luffy pointed to Shirahoshi. She saw everything. He said finally as he looked at his daughter. Why did you never tell me this? Her father said, demanding an explanation immediately. It's because Mom didn't want more conflict, so I ended up hiding it. She commented, though she had been cowardly at that time, but she would no longer be so. Neptune, despite his anger, nodded. I want all of them arrested. He exclaimed to his soldiers, as they began to head to the bottom of the sea to collect the fallen bodies. I want Hody Jones and his group personally to be tried. Well, that was quite easy. Luffy murmured, with the threat of the Merfolk Island being so easily destroyed with just one strike from Shirahoshi. In the end, Shirahoshi, Zoro, and Robin went to the Ryugu Palace, and Luffy said they would be free to do as they pleased while he ended up going to the Merfolk Island, wanting to visit the place alone. Chapter 349, Fishman Island 05. Luffy walked around the island after landing, observing it for the first time. The people still seemed frightened by the chaos caused by Shirahoshi's power. People started to notice him as he strolled through the streets lined with houses resembling corals. It's very beautiful down here. Luffy had to admit. He ignored the gossip being stirred up about him as he approached a well-known place. So this is one of the iconic places of this world. Luffy murmured, looking at the sign at the entrance. He then decided to enter, opening its doors while there seemed to be little activity at the entrance since people were still celebrating Whitebeard's return, but the place was also open so he saw no reason not to continue. His entrance caught the attention of some mermaids who were in the place. A customer. One mermaid murmured in surprise. Luffy stared and noticed 4 mermaids working there, cleaning the tables after people had been celebrating all day before their arrival. Wait. This is Straw Hat-san. One quickly noticed. Hello, mermaid. Can I serve myself here? Luffy asked curiously as the other mermaids recognized him. Of course. I will tell Madame Shia early that Monkey D. Luffy is here. One of the mermaids spoke as she left the area. Well. Can you bring me some drinks? Luffy asked as he reached the counter, while the mermaids quickly brought things for him, slightly blushing. We have aquatic lemon juice, Mugiwara-san. We also have coral milkshake. Do you want some sea tea? Luffy looked at those 3 cups with a not-so-pleased face and immediately refused. Sorry. But what I want is alcohol. Give me your best rum. Luffy said. The 3 mermaids looked at each other and went to fetch his alcohol. So he's here. Madame Shia early said with interest as she walked through the doors to see Monkey D. Luffy drinking alcohol, surrounded by 3 mermaids hugging him. You are so strong, Luffy-san. I was all emotional when you entered the war. One mermaid spoke while rubbing against Luffy's arm. You really are brave. You even killed a Tenri Obito in front of the whole world. I've never seen anything like it. Another mermaid spoke in Luffy's lap. You truly are a hero. To think that Uncle Whitebeard would come out alive from that war. A third mermaid murmured as she kissed Luffy on the cheek. You're exaggerating. I just did what I should for my brother. Luffy said before smiling and drinking his alcohol. Don't you agree? Madame Shia early. Luffy looked at the large mermaid watching. Can you let our customer breathe a little? She approached, asking the other mermaids, as they quickly ran away from Luffy with blushing faces while they seemed to behave. This is not very good behavior while this man is the fiancé of the princess, as you know. Madame Shia early said with a stern tone, making the mermaids a bit embarrassed. Anyway, forget that. Madame Shia early, if you're here, it's an honor to meet the seer of the Mermaid Island. Luffy smiled at the woman after drinking more from his bottle. You seem to know me. Madame Shia Early said calmly, looking at the pirate with interest. Of course. You are Arlong's sister. Luffy commented calmly, setting a somewhat hostile mood. Well, you could say that. I heard one of your companions killed him. Madame Shia Early said. Yes. You could also say he caused his own death. He was enslaving humans in the East Blue for over a decade. Luffy murmured before returning to his drink. I can't deny he had a deserved end. That fool chose his hatred and it spread to some places on the island. She commented, and Luffy nodded. Yes. But that's also settled. My princess ended them. You must have heard the explosions and how the sea was agitated. It was the cleansing, and I fear to say that the Mermaid District no longer exists. Luffy commented. Yes. I already knew about that. She said at the end. Now tell me, for you being here, did you see anything in the future? I'm not going to destroy the Mermaid Island or anything, am I? Luffy asked curiously. No. She said with a raised eyebrow. I didn't see anything about your future if that's what you're asking. She spoke at the end. Luffy looked at her for a moment, knowing she was lying, but he didn't mind as long as she didn't freak out saying he would destroy the island. Anyway, I want to enjoy this place. Luffy said, and the mermaid nodded. The straw hats soon began to spread out as everyone started to leave Ryugu Palace and also began enjoying the island. Usopp. They have a picture of a milkshake. Chopper shouted, looking at the Mermaid Cafe. Let's go in and see what they have. Usopp exclaimed excitedly as he entered. Customer-san? A single mermaid greeted him before recognizing their identities. You are friends of Luffy-senpai. The mermaid exclaimed as she approached. Have you seen Luffy? Chopper exclaimed, not having seen his captain for the last few hours. He's there, behind the cafe in the VIP area. The mermaid said. Do you want to see him? Yes. Show us the way. Usopp said as the mermaid nodded and led them behind the mermaid cafe. When they arrived, they encountered a strange scene. Luffy was inside a coral pool drinking, surrounded by more than 20 bikini-clad mermaids. Nothing explicit was happening, but he was clearly enjoying himself surrounded by so many women in bikinis with fishtails. Luffy is living the dream of anyone from this world. Usopp exclaimed, dazed. What? Where? Chopper, too innocent to understand what he was referring to, was looking for something tasty that Luffy must have been eating. Luffy looked over with a smile. You guys are here. Folks. Luffy smiled at them while continuing to enjoy the small paradise of beautiful mermaids. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the island, Lami was competing in something with Reiju, while Nami, Vivi, Alvida, Nojiko, and Kuina went out to shop on the island. Some stayed in the palace while others went to different places on the island. Luffy was again walking through the island's streets, heading towards the harbor, noticing an increase in ships coming from the surface. A quite obvious reaction with many pirates wanting to reach the New World after the great loss of the navy. He saw some familiar flags, and he would speak to them later, but first focused on his ship. As he approached, no one near the Black Pearl and the others. There were guards keeping watch as they did on Whitebeard's pirate ships. He passed easily, being well known, and boarded the ship while he was alone. Entering it, he went straight to the prison, filled with Tenri Obitos. Everyone there immediately saw the door opening, especially the celestial dragons who grimaced with hatred at Luffy. Hey, you damn inferior being! One shouted but couldn't continue, as Luffy's wave of haki covered the entire place, leaving only 2 people standing. Page 1 maintained a cautious look at Luffy but was thankful he had knocked down those idiots who had been screaming the whole time about getting revenge when they had the chance. But Luffy wasn't interested in him, but rather in Chief Jailer Domino, whom he had taken from Impel Down. The woman looked at him with a dark tone but was surprised when he simply opened her cell. Come with me, you're tired of staying here, how about you come along? Luffy smiled. Why are you doing this? She asked with a cautious tone. I've decided you'll be a member of my fleet. Luffy said. He hadn't intended to take this woman before, but not wanting her to get hurt as the only woman in the prison rebellion, he ended up bringing her on the ship as well. And if I refuse? She said, not wanting to associate with a pirate. You can choose that. Then you can leave. But do you really want to go back to Impel Down? Living there is a bit sad. Luffy spoke with a smile. But you can also work for me. You can get strong. So you decide. Luffy said, turning to leave. Hey, wait. Page 1 murmured. Speak. Luffy looked at him. Can't you get me out of here? He asked. I could, but you'll have to swear loyalty to my flag. Otherwise, you're just a trade with Kaido. Luffy said. Page 1 was silent but conflicted. Luffy saw this and started to leave the ship. He couldn't help but smile as Domino followed him. I see you've decided. No. I just don't know what to do yet. She said with a stern tone. Luffy didn't care and was about to leave the ship when he felt his den-den-mushi ring. He saw it was Yuta. "Luffy?" she said with an urgent tone. "Did something happen?" Luffy asked, his eyebrow raised by the tone of her voice. "Some prisoners that Pippo brought. They've escaped from prison," she said. "Who?" Luffy kept his voice calm, despite the surprise, wanting to understand the situation first while Domino remained silent beside him. "It's Cracker and Reiju's family. They've escaped and caused some chaos. They're far from here. We can't stop them." Yuta spoke. "That's kind of bad. I'll stay here a bit longer before heading to Skypiea with the crew, just let me know if something like this happens again," Luffy said and hung up the den-den-mushi. "Well, you see why I need a jailer, Miss Domino?" Luffy looked at her. Although he didn't like the news, there wasn't much he could do since he was far from Skypiea now. Domino said nothing, and Luffy continued to exit the ship, with the woman following him. But as they reached the port, there was a crowd of people being held back by the guards. "Look, it's him," a pirate said. "Luffy-sama. Hire me. Let me join your crew. Let's dominate this era together, accept me into your fleet. I want to be a member of the 4 emperors who without territories." A crowd of people were all gathered while shouting at Luffy, who scratched his head at this, somewhat surprised by this reception, seeing Neptune's guards not letting them pass. "Sorry folks." Luffy began to speak to them. "But I'm not interested," he said, leaving everyone surprised, as he had once thought. It was a bunch of criminals looking for a powerful flag to continue committing crimes. The next moment, he released his haki, catching everyone off guard as they fell to the ground, surprising the guards, while Domino had already seen this in the prison more than once. Luffy looked at a group behind a crowd of pirates as he approached with a smile. Kid, Killer, Basil Hawkins, Budge, X-Drake, Apu, Urge, were there, and he released another burst of Conqueror's haki at them, catching them off guard. His haki was much more powerful than what they had seen in Sabaody, making them feel a mountain on top of them as he put pressure on them. All the 7 rookies with bounties above 100 million soon began to fall to their knees. "I know you're interested in seeing how powerful I am. So I'll give you a taste," Luffy declared with a smile, increasing the pressure even more. "What?" Everyone was surprised as they fell further, unable to move, and some looked at Luffy in fear as he released haki all around that area of the island, with everyone there stunned by the event. Luffy continued pressing them not to intimidate them, but for them to see how strong they would need to be if they wanted to reach the top of the new world. Kid clenched his teeth at this. "I won't let you humiliate me," Kid exclaimed, releasing his own Conqueror's haki for the first time in his life, against his, though it was like a child trying to fight an adult. Luffy stopped releasing his haki and opened a satisfied smile at this. "Ha ha ha. That's what I wanted to see. Very good. I hope we meet again, and that you be a powerful challenge in those waters," Luffy declared as everyone looked at him cautiously. "Anyway, where's Bonnie?" Luffy asked. "She stayed in Sabaody," Hawkins responded, and Luffy nodded to that. It seems the girl had accepted his proposal and he would return to the island to pick her up. "Great, see you then. Don't let any pirates get close to my ship." Luffy spoke to the guard still dazed in the middle of the fallen, fainted crowd. He looked at Domino. "Let's go to Ryugu Palace, after all, there's a trial happening," Luffy said, as Holy Jones and the others would be tried by King Neptune. Chapter 350, Fishman Island 06. Luffy returned to the Ryugu Castle with Domino. As he entered the throne room, where Neptune was at that moment beside all his 4 children judging Holy Jones and Vanderdecken 9, both handcuffed and still quite battered from Shirahoshi's attack. "You are accused of murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, and treason against the island of the Fishmen," Neptune began, showing a tone clearly unsatisfied with the situation. "Big deal, Neptune. You listen too much to that foolish wife, leading us down an unworthy path, while we have to kneel to the humans on the surface," Holy Jones openly mocked. In the room, Luffy stood at a distance, not getting too involved in the discussion and the trial. Present were Whitebeard himself and some of his crew members like Marco and others, along with members of the Straw Hat crew, listening to the entire trial, such as Robin, Jinbai, and Shirahoshi. The comment from Holy Jones quickly enraged Neptune, as he pointed his trident at Holy Jones with fury. "Dare to speak of a Toheim once more and I will execute you right here," he said with a bloodthirsty glint in his eyes. "Fine words for a man who needs humans for everything. You are weak, Neptune, and," Holy Jones said fearlessly. He would accept his death quietly, while still defending his beliefs to the end. "To think things have came to this point," Jinbai murmured. He felt responsible for everything that was happening. After all, he let Arlong go after taking him out of Impel Down, where he ended up doing horrible things after talking with Nami about her life in East Blue. Beside Holy Jones, Vanderdecken 9 was crying. I just wanted to marry Princess Shirahoshi. Vanderdecken 9 said immediately, looking at the princess. I did all this for love. He complained, while everyone looked at him like an idiot. I already have a fiancé. Shirahoshi said calmly, as the man had received a knife hitting his heart. Neptune, tired of this, already gave his verdict wanting to end this. Anyway, I sentence you to death for all your crimes. He exclaimed, while none of the jurors from the island of Tritons denied it, since Shirahoshi had given her testimony against Hode Jones seeing him murder her mother. As for Vanderdecken 9, not much was needed to condemn him after years of throwing things at Shirahoshi. Luffy was just looking from a distance and finally approached. The first thing he went to see was the whale with a crown on its head standing in a corner, drawing the attention of others at that moment. Hey, whale! He called out, while the whale looked at him curiously. Do you by any chance want to join my crew? He asked, as the whale became more confused by that. Huh? What are you doing? Neptune immediately exclaimed from his throne seeing Luffy asking such a question to his loyal companion. Oh. This is the damn thing. You already want to steal my companion, besides having taken my daughter? Neptune was scowling at Luffy. Don't be like that, father-in-law. Luffy said approaching them. I don't force anyone, but if he wants, he can come. Luffy said, flashing a smile at Shirahoshi, completely ignoring Neptune. Don't call me father-in-law, damn it. Neptune exclaimed again with another grimace. Gorura. Whitebeard laughed at that, having remained silent the entire time. Anyway, since we are on the island of Tritons, Luffy said turning back to Neptune. Let's finish this and let's prepare the wedding with my future wife. He declared, knowing that Shirahoshi would wish to marry here, with her family rather than in Skypiea. Who said you're going to marry her? Both Neptune and his other 3 children shouted at Luffy. So sudden. I haven't even put on a dress yet. Shirahoshi shyly listened to those words. Don't agree with him. The 4 family members shouted at her while she continued to timidly place her hand on her face, while Luffy didn't care about the Neptune family's anger. Neptune's face changed from enraged to one of defeat a moment later as he remained silent. He was in a place with several people at this moment, wearing a suit next to Shirahoshi in a white dress. The wedding had been initiated in the island's square while the closest family members were there, and the rest of the island was around the square with many people on the upper part watching the royal wedding. Neptune had no choice but to walk his daughter down the aisle in front of the entire island. While he did not look very pleased, Luffy was at the altar while Neptune's minister of the left, who would be officiating, stood in front of Luffy. Shirahoshi looked quite excited, unlike her family while her brothers near the altar seemed to share their father's situation. With no choice, Neptune walked his daughter up to Luffy. I'm going to kill this human. Neptune exclaimed, clenching his fists angrily as he lost his precious daughter. Ignoring this, the minister began the wedding vows. Do you take this mermaid as your future wife and will be with her until death do you part? The minister asked Luffy, who nodded while wearing a black suit. Yes. He replied with a smile. The minister of the left turned back to the giant mermaid. Do you take this human as your husband? He asked Shirahoshi, who nodded timidly. Yes. She declared with a small smile to Luffy. Both have consented. Now I ask you, is there anyone against this marriage? Speak now or forever hold your peace. The minister of the left said to the entire island. I object. I object. I object. I object. The only ones who exclaimed were Neptune and his 3 children. The minister of the left nodded to that. As no one has spoken up, he began. Hey, don't ignore me. Neptune and your 3 sons shouted, but the minister continued. Then I declare you husband and wife. He spoke in the end. Shirahoshi ended up grabbing Luffy with her hands. He felt strange with it, but had no other choice as he was kissed by that mouth larger than his entire head. With that, the wedding was complete. While Neptune and his children cried, Luffy and Shirahoshi entered a carriage that took them back to Ryugu Palace. The people of Fishman Island were celebrating while clapping for the newlyweds. Seeing the kingdom's princess marrying a human was a big step towards the goal of the late queen at Hoheim, sealing a pact that humans and fishmen could finally unite. Even members of the worst generation that Luffy had met before were present while keeping to their own thoughts. A few days passed and Luffy woke up in a giant bed with him and all his wives, including Shirahoshi, while she occupied most of the bed. Luffy opened his eyes and left before anyone woke up, and walked around the castle until he saw one of his crewmates alone sitting drinking. He ended up joining him. You didn't find your room and spent the night here, did you? Luffy approached. You're saying I got lost? Of course not. Zoro complained while Luffy shook his head seeing that was indeed the reason. Pass me the sake. Luffy sat next to the swordsman and started to drink his sake with him. So, Captain, what's your plan now that the whole world is paying attention to us? Zoro ended up asking Luffy, who smiled before answering. I want you guys to stay here for a bit. I'm going with the Whitebeard fleet to the New World. I'm going to do some important things and want you guys to meet me in Sabaody after I cross the red line. Luffy instructed. What do you plan to do in the New World? You said we would train a bit more before entering those waters. Do we need that? Zoro asked given his strength in Maniford. We are strong enough to compete for territories in the New World, but we are still novices with just a few months at sea. I want us to be more prepared when we invade the New World. Luffy said, maintaining a gleam in his eye. As soon as we get there, I want to dominate all the territories. And we will do it without any problems. After all, if we face the 4 Emperors, we might even win a victory here and there. However, the world government will spare no effort to destroy us and instigate these fights to try to catch us. Luffy spoke, drinking some liquor to get rid of the hangover. So we'll have to deal with pirates and the world government at the same time. Zoro murmured, a glint of challenge in his eyes, but he understood his captain's reasoning. After all, they could receive attacks from all sides. Yes, it's time for us to dominate the seas. This year of training will give us enough power for that. I no longer possess the power of my devil fruits, but that's also good. Luffy said. After all, I don't want to rely too much on my fruits, since not everything is based on fruits. They are just a support, the base strength and Haki is what dominates everything. I was lucky in fighting Saturn, but I doubt I could maintain that state fighting against the other elders at the same time. I have to be strong enough to face them and even worse things. Luffy continued and drank some more. Not just that, he would also have to worry about the kingdoms that were his territories. Most of them were already under his name under his flag. He could say that East Blue belonged to him, however, it still lacked military power. As much as, in these months, all the kingdoms where he had placed instructions, were starting to create armies, it still wasn't enough. He needed weapons and good material, so he bought Wapol's fruit to build a powerful metal and create a weapon factory in Skypiea. He already had an idea of who might consume it. In the end, a few more days of celebrations happened in the palace, while Luffy socialized more with the members of the Whitebeard crew and spent time with his brothers, reminiscing about the past. So, when will we see Sabo? Lucy commented, looking at the fish outside the palace, feeling quite excited about this future meeting. Soon. Luffy commented. I'm excited to see him again and to think that he was alive all this time. Ace murmured with an excited look having revealed the brother he thought had been dead since Alabasta. Yes, I'm sure that you will find him first before us, Ace. After all, I doubt he'll stay put after knowing the truth and will probably look for the Whitebeard crew. Luffy commented and looked at his brothers. How about we reminisce about old times with some sake, like when we did our ritual to become brothers? Luffy said, and both nodded as he grabbed some sake. Although Lucy was the only one who didn't like alcohol, she still enjoyed the moment. A moment later, all 3 brothers were drinking, like when they were just kids in the Goa Kingdom, in the middle of that forest with almost no one knowing of their existence, while they were nobodies and now, their names echoed around the entire world at this moment, as a new era was arising. After that, Luffy went to talk with his crew. Lucy accompanied him too, as she was now part of the Straw Hats. It was time for Luffy to talk about his plans. So, we're meeting on Sabaody Island today, right? Nojiko asked. Yes, there are people to pick up there, and also Rayleigh will go with us to Skypiea. After we return, we will train for 1 year isolated from the world. I'm sure the genetically modified monsters by Shiki's scientist will be our training base during that period. Luffy said, as everyone nodded. You're not going to pick up more women in the New World, are you? Nami murmured, crossing her arms and giving Luffy a hawkish look. What is this? You think I pick up women everywhere? Luffy mocked. You already picked up one in Impel Down. She pointed to Domino, who was standing by. He just laughed. Anyway, I'll be going. I'll get in touch with you. Luffy said, ignoring the accusation. In the end, the Whitebeard pirates began to head back to the port, while Luffy went to the Moby Dick, hitching a ride. Whitebeard said goodbye to Neptune and the others. Hey, don't forget to pick up the Flying Dutchman, that ship is important for my ship collection. Luffy exclaimed and looked at Neptune. Goodbye, father-in-law. He said while Neptune cursed him. In the end, Whitebeard boarded the ship and thus the fleet began to depart, returning to the New World. Come on, men. Let's return to the New World as heroes and clean up all the mess those damn 4 emperors made in our territories. We'll also teach everyone a lesson. Newgate declared, while all the pirates alongside Luffy began to shout. Luffy remained calm, but also excited to finally enter those waters for the first time. Chapter 351, Punk Hazard 01. In the midst of a stormy sea, With huge waves continuously crashing against each other amid heavy rain and lightning, ships began to appear. The first was the Moby Dick, followed by 20 more trailing behind, heading back to the New World. "We are here again." The members of the Whitebeard pirates maintained a satisfied look, surveying the tumultuous waters. Bubbles burst from the Moby Dick, and more coatings exploded from the other ships until the entire fleet was finally ready to sail towards their territories. The rain and lightning continued to pour down from the sky, lighting up the entire area. Luffy gazed with a bit of admiration at the chaotic scene before him. He and his crew would navigate these waters in the future, but he certainly already had a taste of this sea until the Black Pearl sailed here. Beside him, Ace approached. "Are you already scared of navigating the New World, Luffy?" He teased with the question. "Do you think I'm scared of this place?" "I'm just excited because I've officially came to this sea. I will conquer the whole New World, Ace. Remember that," Luffy retorted, mocking his brother's provocation. "Arrogant as always, aren't you, Luffy?" Ace murmured, but soon smiled. "Anyway, we'll be waiting for that. Are you going already?" he asked. Luffy nodded, looking into the darkness of the night, raising an arm and looking at his wrist. "Yes, Ace. I need to do some things and it has to be somewhat quick." He lowered his arm and looked in a certain direction. "After all, many forces are in motion now. Probably this organization I'm targeting must be in chaos with the death of their leader. I need to hurry to execute my plan." Luffy then turned his attention to the other crew members, with them watching him at that moment. "So you're leaving, Straw Hat?" Marco asked with a friendly smile. "Looks like we won't see each other soon." Vista spoke. "It's a shame we can't exchange a few blows, since I wanted to see the skills of the one who possesses the sword of the ancient king of pirates," he commented. "In the future, we will have a chance," Luffy said. "Anyway, thank you for your help, Monkey D. Luffy. I'm sure that we got out of Manaford so well thanks to your crew." Jazu acknowledged. Luffy nodded, turning his attention to Whitebeard. "Goodbye, kid. Good luck, and when you return to these waters in the future, make your name," he said. Luffy nodded. "You can count on it, Whitebeard. I hope to find you strong and healthy still, you hear me?" Luffy spoke smiling. They looked at each other with some respect. Truthfully, Luffy didn't believe he would meet him again and this would probably be their last meeting, but without saying anything more, he turned around. "Good luck, Straw Hat," Marco said. "Thank you. Ace's brother, see you. Get back to the ship when you can, we'll have a feast," the Whitebeard crew exclaimed cheerfully. "You are our friend, visit when you can." Various exclamations came from the pirates of the divisions. Luffy nodded. He liked these people and now Whitebeard would have a chance to live a little longer with his family. Putting that aside, Luffy bent his knees on the ship's deck and exploded into the air, flying with moonwalk. Quickly approaching the dark clouds in the sky, and looking at his wrist where there were 3 eternal pose, he chose one specifically before sensing its magnetic field and moving in that direction, bursting through the air, slicing through the rain and dodging falling lightning at that moment. The Whitebeard crew watched as Luffy disappeared into the horizon. "Hope to see him soon," Marco commented. "Yes, Luffy will be here with his crew soon. So, we can't fall behind. I'll get so strong that I'll kick his ass when I see him," Ace said with a challenging smile. "Well, men, let's move forward now. After all, we have our territories to reach and see the chaos they made in them," Whitebeard said and everyone nodded. Finally, they began to move forward. Luffy continued to navigate through the storm until he spotted an island in the distance. With a moonwalk, it didn't take long for him to finally see it, as it was enveloped by toxic smoke. This was Punk Hazard, moments before the fight between Aokiji and Akainu, with the island serving as a major government research base where Dr. Vegapunk worked on research for the government. Luffy believed the accident was caused by his assistant, Caesar Clown. The island was uninhabitable. Dr. Vegapunk had moved to Egghead and Caesar had secretly reactivated the abandoned base and started his Smile project with Doflamingo. Luffy was after Caesar, so he decided to capture him. Moreover, there was a fruit on this island that interested him, wanting to obtain it for the person he believed was most suited for it. As soon as he arrived above the island, Luffy removed a mask from the system. He might not have his devil fruit, but he still had the system with many credits he had acquired in recent days. He even convinced Neptune to give him a dowry. After placing the mask on his face, he advanced onto the island. Meanwhile, Caesar Clown was quite agitated as an assistant helped him pack everything up. They had to leave the laboratory by order of their new leader. The Don Quixote pirates had affiliated themselves with the Beast Pirates for protection, as without Doflamingo, they would be doomed to destruction with so many enemies they had acquired, and without Joker, the underworld would also be in chaos. It was at that moment that an explosion occurred, shaking the entire station, with Caesar and Monet immediately looking towards the source of the sound. "What's happening?" Caesar exclaimed with a look of fear. "We should find out, Dr. Caesar," Monet said in her white lab coat, not yet having her modifications, just an ordinary woman. Meanwhile, at one of the entrances, Luffy entered the laboratory in a suit sealed against the poisonous gas. After blowing up the entrance with a punch, he picked up the dented door and put it back where he had taken it from, although it no longer covered everything, with some poisonous gas leaking through the gaps. Luffy started walking, even with the poison entering the base. He knew he had time to do everything he needed before leaving there, so he pressed on. He also quickly sensed the presence of everything in that base. There were many artificial fruits there along with Caesar and his assistant. It seemed that no one else was there, so the children were not used by Caesar yet at this time. He continued cutting through the corridors until he entered a large space leading to the center of the base. His hockey showed two presences coming towards him through the corridor ahead. Caesar flew in his gaseous form and finally encountered Luffy in the corridor, stopping in front of him angrily, with Monet appearing below him. Caesar's angry look quickly turned to astonishment with a grimace. After all, who in the world didn't know Monkey D. Luffy at that moment? "What are you doing here?" Caesar exclaimed in fear. "I'm here to rob you," Luffy said with a smile. And before Caesar could say anything more, Luffy was already in front of him. He simply clenched his fist with hockey and struck him in the face, making Caesar fly a considerable distance, with blood spraying in the air from his broken nose, before he collapsed defeated on one side of the corridor. Meanwhile, Monet immediately stepped back, with Luffy landing in front of her, looking at her with interest. So it seems that what was expected is happening. The Don Quixote pirates are acting. I would like to understand the situation now that Doflamingo is dead, Luffy said calmly. Monet couldn't act while she transformed into snow, but Luffy hit her on the head, causing her to faint. So easy to deal with them, Luffy commented, looking at the two fallen on the ground. Anyway, he said, taking some handcuffs from the system and placing them on Monet, then moving towards Caesar. Caesar opened his eyes a moment later and was stunned as he saw Luffy staring at him with handcuffs placed on his arm. Hey, what are you doing? Do you know who I am? I am the greatest scientist of all, he exclaimed immediately. You really are a good scientist, which is why I will be capturing you. I'll need your help in my plans. Luffy did not hide his greed. Caesar would be very useful. Caesar, trying to maintain his pride, now understood why Luffy was there. He valued his abilities, and this immediately made him fearful that he was about to be used by another pirate. Wait, you can't do this. We are directly affiliated with Kaido and the Beast Pirates. Caesar tried to argue, but Luffy just laughed. That doesn't matter, since we will take down Kaido in the future, so you will come with me anyway, he said before slapping Caesar again, making him truly faint this time. Luffy made sure they would stay locked up and left them there while he entered a base and quickly began to explore the whole place. There was a smile factory and a reasonable stock of artificial fruits, but his real interest was in the junkyard of the place. As he was at its entrance, he blew up the place, entering the junk dump, and walked through it until he found a pink fruit. This fruit was an experiment classified as a failure by the world government when Dr. Vegapunk was working here, trying to develop an artificial fruit for Kaido. However, in the tests, it was deemed a disposable experiment, making the world government very disappointed, as they had spent many resources on this project. In the end, after that, Caesar went mad and caused the incident that led to the chaos the island is in today. Failed experiment? What foolishness! Luffy murmured, looking at the fruit in his hand. Momonosuke had managed to transform into a giant dragon, though not as large as Kaido. After all, this fruit is inferior to the fish fruit model, Azure Dragon Devil fruit. But still, it gives more power than most fruits. Satisfied, Luffy stored the fruit as he left the place, going to other areas to steal some money and take the resources. He could put Caesar's treasures with his money in the system, but since he didn't have his more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil fruit at the moment, he would have to carry the other things he picked up at the base. He was not interested in the fruits, so he decided to destroy them, along with the whole laboratory. But just as he was about to start, he felt a presence entering the base through another of the large laboratory's entrances. Look what we have here, a Vice Admiral of the Navy. Luffy murmured and opened a smile, giving up his move as he walked towards the entrance. A man with a bamboo, wearing navy robes, walked in, surprised to see Caesar and Monet handcuffed in the middle of the corridor. Luffy approached along the corridor, while his steps echoed through the place. Hello, Vice Admiral Virgo, he commented calmly, appearing in front of the man. Chapter 352, Punk Hazard 02. I'm going to handle something. Vice Admiral Virgo stepped out of his office and notified the men of G5, who looked more like bandits than Navy soldiers saluting the Vice Admiral who stayed in the New World to protect them while the rest of the Navy fought against the Whitebeard pirates. The New World was a chaos, unsurprisingly, and Virgo was trying to keep the sea controlled, dispatching soldiers and ships to manage those regions. He had been in touch with Dressrosa while they reported on the path the Don Quixote family would take. Thirsty for revenge to kill those who caused Doflamengo's death, Virgo ended up agreeing to affiliate with Kaido. He received the latest updates on the plans and decided to head to Punk Hazard with a ship to escort Caesar to Wano to work with Queen in the land of the samurai's factories. Vice Admiral Virgo is leaving. Where is he going? The sea is a chaos, with a growing number of pirates emerging. As they complained, Virgo kept leaving without caring about the comments. He simply left the base and flew into the air with Moonwalk, as he advanced towards a ship from Dressrosa on the sea heading to Punk Hazard. He arrived at the ship a moment later and everyone greeted him. Virgo, it's been a long time since I've seen you. A man with spiky hair crossed his arms. Yes. Virgo was terse. He was not in a good mood, as everyone was mourning the fall of their former boss. The ship continued sailing until Punk Hazard finally appeared to them, while Virgo left the ship to meet Caesar and Monet, but as soon as he walked through the doors where he had access and encountered the two tied up with sea stone, and with their mouths shut. What's going on here? He murmured, looking at Caesar, trying to speak to him, but with an incomprehensible voice. But in the next moment, his attention was drawn to the corridor ahead, when he heard footsteps approaching, and from one of the corridors, a person emerged walking calmly towards him. Virgo looked at Luffy behind his glasses with a quite bewildered expression, seeing one of the people he and his family wanted to destroy, there in front of him. Vice Admiral Virgo. So you're here. Luffy spoke with a smile. Mugiwara. Virgo murmured with a dark tone despite keeping serious. It's good to see a dog of Doflamengo here too. I had the desire to kill him, but my partner got there first. Not that I can blame her, since my wife would be very sad if I took her goal of revenge. Luffy started calmly. Virgo looked at him unstartled that Luffy knew about his affiliation with the Don Quixote pirates, as he tested himself, burning with rage inside, so much that he couldn't hold back anymore and exploded the floor, passing through Caesar and Monet ready to kill the Straw Hat. The reports indicate that Monkey D. Luffy could no longer use the abilities of his fruits at the end of the war. This is the chance to kill him when there seems to be no one else from his crew here. Virgo thought as he approached Luffy with his still open smile. Luffy saw the man raise his staff as he moved towards him. Luffy quickly drew his sword at the last second, clashing against the weapon with haki and generating a wave of yellow lightning. Virgo clenched his teeth, seeing that Luffy was truly powerful with haki, trying to put as much power into his haki, but Luffy had evolved even further with basic haki and began to cut through Virgo's haki. You really are a powerful haki user, Virgo, but your limit is just the basic form. Luffy taunted, slicing through the bamboo. Virgo felt his arm being severed from his body the next moment. Before he could react, with blood spreading around, with Caesar and Monet watching this scene stunned and with a glint of fear, Luffy moved and punched him in the chest. Virgo put his arm in front to protect himself from the attack, unable to properly react to Luffy's attack, and his body flew backwards, breaking the walls of the laboratory in a straight line. Virgo was not having an easy time as he felt the pain of losing an arm. He tried to stand firm so as not to break the other with a punch from Luffy, which made him break all the walls until stopping in the 8th room after that punch, finally falling to the ground with some debris falling on him. He was a bit breathless and growled, feeling immense pain. He tried to lift his head and, the next moment, Luffy appeared in front of him, trying to punch him once more. Virgo quickly used instant transmission to move away, but Luffy reappeared by his side the next moment. You are slow. Luffy commented, delivering another punch to Virgo, who flew into the wall, exploding again. Luffy looked to that side of the wall and began walking forward, raising an eyebrow, with Virgo finally reacting, flying towards him, transformed all in armament haki. Even with just one arm, Virgo did not seem to give up, at a disadvantage, trying to hit Luffy, who quickly put his hand in front, waiting to see the strength of the opponent, as he was dragged a few meters back, but nothing compared to what he did to Virgo, not even passing 5 meters. Interesting. Luffy murmured and sheathed his sword while his arms transformed, coated in haki, getting ready to fight. He flew the next moment towards Virgo. Meanwhile, Caesar and Monet could only hear the explosions while the whole place trembled with the intense battle in the next moments. They are destroying my entire laboratory. Caesar complained with his muffled voice, as he could not speak with his mouth gagged with a rope. Monet was frightened seeing Virgo's arm fallen on the ground in front of them. The explosions continued until Virgo, again, flew into that room, hitting against the wall, cracking it. He tried to stay standing, but he was all bruised. Even with his whole body wrapped in haki, blood was spread all over the place. He had his arm broken, his ribs, and his organs were all damaged. Even his glasses had already fallen off, leaving him in a deplorable state. Luffy burst through the wall he came from, while approaching calmly, looking at the man mockingly. "I thought you would be a greater challenge, but you are too weak," Luffy commented. Despite having faced several vice admirals and used just Haki and the 6 styles to defeat many of them in the war, he expected more from Virgo, since he was a challenge for Trafalgar Law in the original. Luffy, sighing, decided to finish this. He simply removed his sword again from its sheath and showed it to Virgo, who could only look at it now without being able to do much. Virgo was without his weapon and his whole body was broken. The only thing he could maintain was his Haki, but it was also already at its limit after just a few blows from Luffy. Luffy didn't care. He turned his body as he placed his sword behind him. It began to glow with red lightning. Preparing to make his move, he then spun quickly, releasing his attack. At the last millisecond, Virgo, even with a broken arm, put his hand in his pocket and was cut the next moment. Monet and Caesar, who were crouched on the ground, saw the blow passing over their heads. "Hey, what's going on up there?" one of the Don Quixote family members asked curiously, hearing the explosions coming from the large mountain on Punk Hazard Island, not understanding what was happening there. "Who knows? Maybe Virgo is annoyed with Monet or something." Another man spoke. But then, the next moment, a huge lightning strike in the shape of a cut emerged from the mountain and went in all directions of the island, piercing all the other peaks of the island as they were cut along that line. The lightning passed over the ship, generating wind, with the members only able to protect themselves by putting their hands in front. "Hey, what was that?" The lackeys of the Don Quixote pirates quickly ducked in fear, as Gladius looked with narrowed eyes, wondering what was happening and looking up at the sky. "Hey, look there." A man pointed to the island again. "What?" others exclaimed. The next moment, everyone was looking at the mountain from where that cut with electricity came out, seeing it fly in half with the Smile Factory being cut by Luffy's sword, which made a 360 degrees movement. Everything turned into chaos after that in the laboratory. Explosions began to emerge all over the place, while Caesar and Monet were in the middle of it all, with the former screaming desperately, not wanting to die or complaining about the destruction of his laboratory. The mountain began to fly over the laboratory, while falling down, creating a cataclysm on the island with explosions and tremors. Luffy saw this with satisfaction, as the Smile Factory was destroyed with this movement, with Virgo being cut. He looked ahead, where there was Virgo, with half of his body cut. Unlike what happened with Law, Virgo was really cut and his life was quickly ending as he couldn't react while having only half of his body. Luffy raised an eyebrow, seeing him with a look of despair holding a Den Mushi that he had pulled from his pocket before Luffy cut him. "Vice Admiral Virgo, are you there?" A female voice continued calling from the Den Mushi. "What is all this noise? Where are you and what is happening?" "Monkey D. Luffy," Virgo murmured as he was dying, still managing to speak in his last moments. "He killed me at Punk Hazard," he said, dropping the Den Mushi the next moment, while Virgo looked at the now open sky. "Soon I'll be meeting you, Da Flamingo." He couldn't help but murmur, and Luffy raised an eyebrow at that. This guy is certainly loyal. He couldn't help feeling a bit of admiration for the man as he died. "Vice Admiral Virgo, Vice Admiral Virgo." The voice on the fallen female Den Mushi kept calling, "He's dead." Luffy decided to speak as the woman on the other end of the line opened her eyes and was stunned before glaring with hatred. "You are Monkey D. Luffy, aren't you? You think you can get away with all this? You will face the justice of the Navy and pay for all your crimes," she exclaimed angrily. "If you knew this person, you wouldn't speak like that," Luffy commented. "After all, he works for Kaido." Luffy replied with the obvious, but looked one last time at the Den Mushi that had a beauty mark below the mouth and smiled. "Goodbye, Vice Admiral Giant," Luffy said and turned off the Den Mushi. He wasn't interested in continuing to talk to that woman, despite thinking she was one of the most beautiful in the Navy. "Anyway, let's deal with the lackeys now." Luffy looked down at the ship on the island, while he had an idea. After all, his next target was Dressrosa and he didn't want to be carrying Monet and Caesar to the place. So, he would leave them there for a few days. He quickly moved to grab both his prisoners and headed towards the ship of the Don Quixote family men. Chapter 353, Viola Princess. The entire ship was on its knees at this moment, even Gladius was on the ground, staring fearfully at Luffy. "So I'm leaving these two with you. I want you to sail calmly in the middle of the sea until I return, and just to be sure, I'm making a vivre card of Gladius and Caesar. After all, I can't let them go, otherwise, I'll have to kill them." Luffy spoke calmly as all the Don Quixote minions trembled on the ground, and Gladius was not much different. As angry as he was at the Straw Hats, he cared more about his life than the feeling of revenge, and now knew that Virgo had been brutally killed. How could he deal with someone who cut a mountain with a whole laboratory not long ago? Luffy nodded, seeing the silence and the fear in their eyes, and grabbed the two prisoners and threw them in the middle of the deck. I'm going to do something important at sea at this moment, so it's better you do exactly as I said. After all, I don't want to kill you. Luffy said with a very firm tone, while everyone felt fear, with Caesar being the most fearful, starting to cry wanting to wake up from this nightmare. Luffy approached the frightened Caesar and took one of his hairs and did the same with Gladius, while doing what he learned with Yamato during their travels. Luffy was not just a captain who gave orders and planned the future of the crew, but also lived learning things with his companions, whether making Vivre card with Yamato, learning to read poneglyphs with Robin, feeling the weather with Nami, and learning to be a better swordsman with Stealing or a better shooter with Usopp. After that, Luffy smiled at everyone. I'm leaving, see you in about 2 days. Goodbye. Luffy said and disappeared the next moment, flying high, leaving Punk Hazard behind, while following the path to Dressrosa with his second eternal pose of the three on his arm, disappearing into the middle of the sky. Dressrosa is known as the land of fairies, the land of romances and passion. While countless toys walked through all the streets of the city, couples met and kissed, while some toys seemed enraged with them, but they didn't care. This is terrible. Treble shouted quickly in a meeting where the crew members gathered there to discuss urgent matters, and this time it was a very delicate issue. After all, there was a Vivre card starting to disappear while burning quickly in front of everyone. Virgo is dying. Diamante was shocked by this. After all, Virgo was one of the elite members and there were only 4 of them, being Treble, Pika, Diamante himself, and Virgo, with the latter about to die. He was in Punk Hazard to escort Dr. Caesar Crown to Wano. Something happened. Pika said in his thin tone. The other members also looked around with tense and fearful glances. We should call Gladius. He must know what's going on.